Well, good morning, everybody. It is Monday, 2/11/2019, and it is like 3 days before my birthday. If anybody cares, yes, it's on Valentine's Day. All my life, I got stuck with presents with a lot of hearts on them, like literally from my parents, my best friends, and everything else. So, yeah, not my favorite holiday, never has been, because it's kind of strange when your birthday falls on Valentine's Day and, you ain't got really anybody to spend it with. So, anyways, welcome. It is beautiful morning this morning, and I got up and I decided to basically at 3 a.m. write a blog post because somebody had sent me something that was Matt Dillahunty had said on an atheist experience over the weekend. Now, I usually do watch AXP, or at least sometimes. I didn't say usually, but people that do will send me things every so often. And this particular person sent me this proposition and recognized it was being a logical dilemma, a false dilemma. And so I wrote a blog on it. And so I'm going to kind of go through that blog with you today. Now, I do want to clarify a few things. One, I have absolutely no will toward Matt Dillahunty. I happen to like the guy. I think that he's done an amazing job for the atheist community. I think he is brilliant on many things. He's articulate. He's actually one probably the most knowledgeable people when it comes to biblical things. I just think that he has a few blind spots, and these blind spots are not something that I've been the only person pointed out before. I know firsthand that a number of people have pointed out a few blind spots for over the years, including many, many years ago. So this is not a slight against him. I just think that if when you're saying certain things, you have to be held accountable to them when you have a logical issue. People call me out all the time, and I'm happy for that. So this is more. I want to show you why what he said is just not logically true. And John, I'm going to mute you real quick because you're getting a lot of background noise. Anybody's welcome to come in while we're doing this. Please do. The link is in the video description. You can actually call in as well. It does not show your phone number now. So if you want to call and ask questions, that is great. But I just want to do a quick video on this because I don't really make standalone videos. I don't have that talent to do so. I'm not going to claim that I do. I tried it many years ago and they had moderate success, but I would get like 300, 400 views on it compared to a Hangout that would get 3,000. So the information is just not getting out. It's not a matter of having more views. It's just that why am I going to make a video that's a standalone that only 300 people are going to watch, even though it's correct, that I can just have a Hangout, kind of talk in real time, which is what I do. I rather do things in real time. I think it's a lot more difficult to do things on the fly. So I happen to like that. But so this is kind of be just my showing you in real time that the statement that he made on the atheist experience, if you're not theist, you're atheist, is logically wrong. Now, the exact statement he had, at least what was given to me, I have not validated this, so please forgive me. I didn't watch the atheist experience, but this is consistent with what Matt generally says. So I'm going to just arguendo say that this is probably something he did say, and you can accuse me of not doing my due diligence, but this is his argument that it always has been. So I don't think it's really, even if it was slightly worded differently, it's still the same intent, right? But he says, if you're convinced that God exists, you're a theist. If not, you're an atheist. To which this person recognized is not true. And he wanted me to kind of address it. So I was like, sure. Actually, let me fix something in my feed here. Anyways, let me welcome a couple people here real quick. John, welcome. You're going to mute now.
Oh, how you doing, Steve?
Hi, buddy.
I just got a notification and saw you were getting busy this morning. So
Sweet. Like I said, more people the merrier. Come on in. I don't mind. You just have to be shown. You will not be allowed in past the waiting room if I don't know who you are and I can't verify your account. So we're safe. We're cool. You can't snipe or bomb or anything like that. So let's kind of dive in here. First of all, this is not going to be a semantic argument. People seem to confuse logic with semantics, and semantics deal with word meanings, right? Which I've always argued the same thing as Matt does, that words don't have meanings, or at least not intrinsic meanings. They have usages. But the logic is what I'm going for here, not the case of what definitions you use, because that gets old. I want to show that logically what he's saying is just not correct. And so I'm going to screen share here as we do this, and we're going to jump right into it. Got any questions real quick, John, or anybody else?
nope, just go for it.
Just do it. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. And as soon as I do that, somebody comes in. Okay, that's just great. Who's coming? Okay, there we go. Somebody, I know this person. I already validated you. All right. So let me go back to here. All right. No, this is not going to be a long-winded differentiation between atheists and non-theists. As I just said, as I literally just said, that is a semantic thing. This is logic. Do you guys see already that there are people that just don't understand the difference? I don't know why, but anyways, okay, so let's dive into this. So, yeah, forgive me a little bit of clickety bait here. I will admit, I didn't find any of the images that kind of worked. So I used this image, words have no meaning, Matt Dillahunty, because I agree with him on this. But a lot of people just pass my stuff off. They don't even bother to read the blog. They see something and they just go after it. And so I've already had people, that I put the blog out there and they were like, well, what's wrong with what Matt said, is saying? Words don't have meaning. I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. Read the blog. Right. Because that tells me they don't even bother to read the blog. So grant me a little bit of leeway there, because I'm not disagreeing with Matt on this. I do agree words have no meaning, no intrinsic meaning. They're just usages. So, all right. Smith says, doesn't logic depend on definitions? Well, sort of. I mean, the logic is the case that if there's one defeater to a proposition, the proposition is false. Okay. So where a proposition is, it's either true or false. That's called the law of excluded middle. And if there's one defeater to a proposition, it is a false statement. And that is dependent upon the fact that there are other definitions. So as long as there are other definitions, that proposition is false. So it's the reasoning that the logic works, but the logic is still logic. Okay. All right. So the statement he made, and by the way, can you read this, or I got to blow it up a little bit? I can make it bigger, I think. Is that better, John?
Yeah, I can read it.
Okay. So, Sandra, can you read that?
Yes, I can.
That's what, by the way, good morning.
Good morning.
Awesome. Good. So he said, if you're convinced that God exists, you're a theist if you're not an atheist. Now, I think we'll all agree that if you're convinced that God exists, we'll call that a theist. I don't think anybody's really going to have an issue with that, correct?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. Okay. Now, obviously, there are other types of systems where that might be not the case. The people have brought up deism, and I fully agree that in a classical theistic system, deist or not theist, deist would be an atheist, but that's an strict, very classical type of theist structure or schema. Not many people use that. I know Dr. Kenny Rhodes does, but other than that, I really don't think I know anybody that does. So generally speaking, most people tend to use the non-classical standard. And as long as I know that which one you're in, I don't care one way or another. Right. There's just it doesn't really matter. Right. So, all right. So let's look at the logic. Now, I've actually ran this by a few people, so I'm pretty sure that's legit. And I did it a very specific way, because I even had a friend of mine who knows logic very well. He said, well, you could do it this other way. And I said, yes, but that doesn't have an exclusivity of what I'm going for by even one defeater. And he said, I thought so. So this is the reason why this works. What is this saying? This is called existential quantification. And again, I am not a logic expert. Don't think that I am. Formal logic, I'm still learning, but I generally understand the concepts. Okay. So what this is saying is, for all of X, atheists have a lack of belief. So these are the predicates: atheist and lack of belief. So all atheists lack of belief. That's just how you would translate that. Pretty straightforward. Anybody disagree with that? That one thing that's standard: all atheists lack of belief, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now this actually says there exists one that does lack of belief that is not an atheist. Now, this is a defeater to his argument, because as soon as you recognize that there are other ways of using these words, right? And we all have gone and looked this up. We all recognize by now that in philosophy, it is, if you want to pass a philosophy course, generally speaking, if you want to read a paper, the way you ought to understand the word to mean is that there's the belief that there are no gods. Now, again, this is not an argument of which one's better or correct. Don't go there. It's not that case. The argument is, as long as there is one defeater to the proposition is false. So the mere fact that there are other viable and completely valid definitions makes this proposition false. There's no way you can get around that. It wouldn't be like the case if I said all polygons with three sides in Euclidean space are triangles. There exists one polygon with three sides in Euclidean space that's not a triangle. That would not follow, right? There's no definition in math that allows for that. There's no exceptions. right? So that logic would fail. But here, when he's saying to people, and he has a larger audience, and you can argue, well, he's doing it from his schema. Okay, then he needs to qualify it, because then you can say, look, at the way we're using these terms, if you're not a theist, you're an atheist. That is correct. He's right on that in classical logic, right? In which case, you can make anything the case. If you're not a theist, you're a dog. Okay, I'm not a theist, therefore I'm a dog. That is just as equally valid of semantic argument if you're going to play that kind of word game. They're arbitrarily taking these things and just saying, well, I'm going to call this an atheist. Okay, fine. By your schema, I'm an atheist. Big freaking deal. I don't use your schema. It's not acceptable to me. And you're saying that your schema is the only way possible, such that if this is the case, you are that. If P, then Q. And that does not follow.
Well, that's when you get into that a rock is an atheist.
Yeah, well, that gives us some other problems. I mean, obviously, when you have atheism equals not theism, then yes, you can definitely prove that rocks are atheists if you're using that schema, which is another reason why I reject it, right? A equals not atheist equals not theist. Rocks are not theist. Atheist equals not theist. Rocks are not theist, or rocks are atheist then. So yeah, but this is a very simple way of showing somebody that this is a true thing here. This is true logic, that the statement he made is false. It would only be true if there was no other possibilities. If there was absolutely no possibility that you can, if you're not a theist, you have to be an atheist, then he would be valid in his statement. And the fact he's just saying this to a specific audience does not, to me, reach the level of being intellectually honest with people.
Would this be a false dichotomy then?
It would be a false dichotomy, because here's somebody asked me for another proof on this. And I said, okay. And I use the theological and cognitivist approach. The theological cognitivist is a non-cognitivist position. They hold that the proposition of theism is not a proposition. You cannot believe it. You cannot not believe it. There is just no proposition to be had. So not BP, which is I don't believe in P, or I don't believe P, it's not even a sensical thing to them, right? So it is a non-cognitivist position. Now, atheism is a cognitivist position, meaning that it can be that you believe P, you can believe not P, you can not believe either, right? In order to not believe P, P has to be a proposition, but the theological cognitivist says P is not a proposition. So theological cognitivism cannot be atheism. You have a category error there, right? Because one's a cognitivist position, the other's not a cognitivist position. So that in itself defeats Matt's argument here. All right.
Yeah.
All right, so let's moving on here. So,
I'm sorry, I'm not feeling too well today.
Yeah, I woke up and we all go through those things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will point out that I find formal logic interesting. I find your argument very interesting. I don't see any problems with your argument, and I personally, I don't care enough or know enough to be able to really try and challenge it. It makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything glaring that says no. Huh?
I sense a butt coming.
You sense a butt coming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and as far as that goes.
Okay. That's good.
And I think it's great. I love watching it. The average person doesn't have a clue what you're talking about. When you just went through the formal logic saying, look, what he said is incorrect. And most of the people that I know, well, actually, I would probably say all of the people that I know, all of the people that I interact with on a daily basis, you would have completely lost them. They wouldn't have cared one iota. And Matt Dillahunty is, he's pushing an agenda. He's clearly stated that on several times. He's trying to normalize atheism, because when you do polls throughout the United States, it's overwhelmingly comes back as a Christian nation. They want to normalize atheism, get it out there. People still say that they'll vote for just about anybody else over an atheist in just general blind polls. And he's trying to change that. And he recognizes, I'll bet if he were to talk to you just one-on-one and say, yeah, I agree with you. Everything you just said is probably correct or is correct. But he's also recognizes that the average IQ of the country isn't going to be able to follow your argument, nor are they probably going to care. So
I don't disagree with anything you just said. Matter of fact, when we get further in this argument, I actually say the same thing. Or similar, at least not to the degree of people understanding, but that is a political thing. Now, here's the thing. I will explain things to my death. If somebody doesn't understand it, if they really want to comprehend it, I'll spend as many hours as it takes. I have in public and private. But you're right. A lot of people don't. In fact, somebody I just timed down in the live chat said, well, this is why philosophy is garbage. If you think it's garbage, go watch something else. You're not worth my time. I'm not going to spend my time explaining something to you if you don't even understand that philosophy is the predicate by which everything else follows. Science is useless without philosophy. Literally, science has no use if there wasn't for philosophy. So if you want to put that kind of narrative out there, do it somewhere else. What's that?
Sorry, that was my phone.
Okay.
So when, going back to what you were saying about politics, when it comes to Matt or that camp or whatever, I noticed that they, when it comes to polls and things like that, they want to say that the people in the polls that identify as non-religious, they want to call them atheists.
Yes.
Too, when that's not any, you can't prove one way or the other what they mean by that if they identify as non-religious.
Yeah, you're actually right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're totally right.
They could be an atheist. They could be someone who just doesn't partake.
It loses the nuance. It loses the granularity, right? I mean, so basically what they try to do is they try to assume all these other positions. And it is political. David Silverman made it political. He actually said, we're trying to, David Silverman, you guys may not know this, but they actually wrote places like Merriam-Webster, not the Learner's Dictionary, because it still has the belief there's no gods, but they actually wrote other dictionaries to try to get this lack of belief position put in the dictionary. It was not in there before. It was changed. It goes back to 1972, where Anthony Flew was making these arguments. So they're trying to change the narrative. They're trying to change these things for political reasons, for exactly like you said. But I understand the need to normalize atheism, but at what cost? Is it Machiavellian to the point that the ends justify the means, that we sacrifice precision and we sacrifice things like what is correct and honorable and truthful? The statement that people are making that you have to be one or the other is just wrong. And anybody who's been in philosophy that I've talked to would know this, and they do know this. I haven't any pushback from anybody that knows philosophy, because there is no pushback to be had. It's like you said, the people that don't bother to learn these things. Now, this right here looks confusing. I get that, right? But anybody who really just sits and looks at it can read what it says. Symbolic logic is just that. Somebody's got a phone going off.
Oh goodness, I'm sorry. That was my phone.
Okay.
I'll go catch it real fast. I was too caught up in the conversation to notice.
Okay. And I don't know why it doesn't show you guys when I screen share. It's weird. Okay, but all right. So this, you can read this like English. For all of X, where X is an atheist, X is also somebody who lacks a belief. That's it. Not that complicated, right? And then this means there exists X that lacks a belief that is not an atheist. That's it. It looks a lot more confusing than it is.
I agree that when you first look at it, like when I first looked at it, the first time that you started using logical statements, expressions, whatever you call those, I was like, what the heck are you even? I had never taken anything on logic before. So first time I looked at it, I was like, okay, what the hell is that? And then just reading your argument, I was able to figure out, okay, well, that means not P. That means P is a proposition. I was able to figure that out. But one thing you also have to remember, and this is the experience of crossing this country for the last decade, dealing with hundreds of thousands of different individuals all over the place. You can explain that to them. One, and two things are going to happen. One, their eyes are just going to glaze over. They just don't care. And then the other group of people, I mean, you got to realize you got a 99 on the ASVAB.
People remember that. I guess
higher than an average person. And this is where I've come to with regards to issues like flat Earth or young Earth creationism. There's really, I believe there are only two kinds of people on issues like that. And this would include logical and philosophical issues as well. There's the people who know the truth or can be convinced of the truth, but are pushing an agenda. They're specifically lying to people or being dishonest to people. I hate to say lying. They're not being completely honest to push an agenda. And then there's the people who literally do not have a high enough IQ to grasp the concepts behind it. So the concepts don't make sense to them. And so they reject them. If it's something that doesn't make any sense to you, you generally will reject it. And so you'll have people that honestly believe the earth is flat. because they don't understand the concepts that people put forward saying, look, the earth is round. Here's how we know it's round. They just don't understand that. If they truly believe that the earth is flat,
It's
and when you're sitting up at a higher area and you're looking, with getting involved in more philosophical, formal logic, getting in more nuanced arguments about some of these things, which I agree with you is needed and should be done. The mass or the majority of people just don't care. And they're not going to spend, even if they have the high enough intelligence to comprehend everything that you say, they don't care. It doesn't affect their lives.
Right. I'm going to address what you said. Trust me. I'm going to address it. Hang on, John. I just wanted to get in real quick, and then I'm going to address something.
Yeah.
And I got to address some of the things in the live chat real true to catch up. And then
I was going to add on to what he was saying, like those people who just don't have a high enough IQ to understand it. It's kind of like how a simple educational system works, where you have to start with the basic stuff and then you have to build them up to the more complex things. That some of these people are just not built up enough to that point to be able to understand some of the more complex or nuanced parts of the conversation, in which you have to go back and figure out where it is that they can actually understand, and then you would have to explain everything up all the way up to that point where you need to get them so they can understand what you're saying.
Right. And I want to reemphasize that I don't think it's a matter of IQ. I think it's exactly what you said. They don't have the foundational. Now, say what you want about me. I have never had anybody tell me that I don't have good foundations on these topics. I read a lot about these topics. I have for many years now. So I do my due diligence on these things. But somebody had pointed out about making videos about other people's positions. That's perfectly fine to do if you have an accurate representation of their argument. People that make videos about me never get my arguments right. Anybody who watches my channel knows this by now. They can literally go to their people's channels and say, what the hell is this video? It has nothing to do with what Steven's talking about. It has nothing to do with his argument. And it's just a straw man. I don't waste time with those. What I'm arguing here is not a straw man argument. This is literally what Matt believes, and I'm addressing it from a logical perspective, right? And so what I think what happens is that people have their bias, and they have this indoctrinated thing that they listen to these channels and go, this must be the way it is, because they don't take the time to actually read the literature, right? Because it takes time. It really is nothing you learn overnight. And so they have this pushback effect saying, well, Steve's can't be right because reasons. But when you show them the logic, you show them the any kind of argument, like the theological cognitivist position, and saying, as well as I do, probably I would say half the people in the audience didn't know what theological non-cognitivist is, even though that argument is completely valid, right? So I agree with you there.
Oh yeah, and when I talk, I get a little bit sidetracked. And I don't mean just people of lower IQ not being capable of understanding it, because honestly, I believe the lower your IQ goes, the more important philosophy is to you.
Sarah could understand it, and she's not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Right.
And, love you, Sarah. Don't kill me.
Yeah, a lot of it is they don't have, just like I forgot who was speaking before, don't have the foundation. They don't have the basic education. They've never been exposed to the concepts of critical thinking. They've never been exposed to a decent education. So they could probably understand everything that you're talking about, grasp all the concepts very well. But with our culture the way it is, and the education systems that a lot of people have been exposed to, they don't have that basis, and they don't care, because society as a whole doesn't seem to care about it.
Yeah, that's because
that goes to what I was trying to say a minute ago, is something that people forget or just don't realize. Ignorance is not stupidity.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And ignorance is undoubtedly curable by giving a person information.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I think that would really help is something you said a few moments ago, Steve, when you were showing that logical equation. When you're trying to teach people, I think it would really help if, when you have an equation like that, if you did write it out in English below it, then, because a lot of people look at those symbols like the Standring was saying and going, what the hell is that? But if the proposition was written out in English below it or beside it, I think it would help people to grasp the concept.
No, you're right, and I usually do. I honestly, I don't know why I didn't do it this time. That's a good point, John. I usually actually do that. So I will take what you said and I will edit that after this is over, and add that in there. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, so that's a very good point. because I want people to understand the logic, because it's not trying to fool anybody. So, but before we get back into the blog, somebody says, can somebody explain what McCrae's position is? Yes, the position is very simple. You do not have to be theist or atheist. There are other positions. Anybody who says that you have to be one or the other is using a very stipulative type of definition of their own usage that is not applicable in all aspects. It's especially not applicable if you read the literature. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to assume every position that's not theist into atheism for political gain, to normalize atheism, which, by the way, I'm all for normalizing atheism, clearly, but not by dishonest tactics. And I think Silverman uses dishonest tactics. Again, there's people that have huge misconceptions because, again, all they do is literally just parrot other people. This whole thing about like the A in atheism, I've explained it countless times and people still don't understand it.
Yeah.
Stanford Encyclopedia makes it very clear. Dr. Paul Draper makes it very clear that the A in atheism, even though etymologically it comes from the Greek for athos, which is without, right? Atheos. That's not what the word actually is utilized to understand to be when you read a paper. It is meant to be not, as in the rejection of theism. This makes theism and atheism a dichotomy. Not a dichotomy, but a contradictory. So if they're contradictories, one has to be true, the other one has to be false, but they both can't be false and true at the same time. That's how it's supposed to be in philosophy, because it's 99% of the literature out there. The only exceptions to this you're ever going to find that I've ever found, and you can try to find more, but it's Flew, Martin, Bullivant, and Smith. That's it. So, but so this whole notion that A is this or asymmetrical, and that's nonsense. I mean, you have things like amorality, right? Amoral does not mean not moral. There's moral and immoral. Immoral means not moral. So you have amoral. You also have things like irrational. Irrational doesn't mean not rational. So that, again, just you can't use etymological fallacies like that to say this is what a word is used in a discipline, because it doesn't work that way. These words have usages because it makes sense in the literature to read a certain way. If you see this word, the author wants you to use it in a certain way, right? So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Wait till they get to trying to understand the concept between flammable and inflammable.
Well, flammable would be the ability to catch fire, and inflammable means usually it has a resistance to catching fire.
Maybe it's inflammable, but there's two different words that mean the same thing. And I messed up the joke probably because I'm just too sick right now.
Remember this, though. The fire triangle is bullshit. It's not a fire triangle. It's fire square. And people are like, what? No, my entire education, my entire childhood is a lie. Yeah, the fire triangle, they lied to you, okay? It's actually 4 things that are required for fire. It's fuel, oxidizer, heat, and what's called an uninhibited free radical chain reaction. So if you don't have all those 4, then you're not going to have fire. Because halon is a system that works, even though you have fuel, you have an oxidizer, and have heat, but it prevents them free radicals from combining in order to have an actual chain reaction to have fire. So
maybe it's still a triangle if you use a different form of math for it.
Yeah. Well, maybe it is inflammable means flammable. I thought inflammable meant resistance to being flammable, but I could be wrong on that. Yeah. Inflammable. Yeah, you're right. Inflammable means to be able to be set on fire. You're right. Flammable.
Yeah.
Inflammable, flammable. Yeah, you're right on that one. I'm sorry. I stand corrected. It's been long days for me too. I'm in the same boat as you. I woke up this morning, and I'm not going to go too much detail, but I was not in good shape. And then I finally spent about an hour in the restroom, and God bless America. So, yeah.
Yeah, I actually had to call in sick to work today because I was feeling so crappy.
Well, why are you here then? I mean, I don't mind, but don't feel bad.
Because I enjoy talking to you and learning new things.
You're the best. All right, so let's get back to the logic here. And by the way, yes, see, I could be corrected. The flammable. Yeah, I had to think about it, and I was like, yeah, I guess you guys are right. So yeah, we all make mistakes. So anyway, so let's go back to the logic here. So I think that people need to call people out on this more, because he's literally telling people that there's only one meaning of a word and that you must hold to that, and that not a theist means that you must be an atheist. This is not logically true and has been explained to him by many people, going back to the logic here. Other atheists are saying the same thing. So there's a lot of atheists out there that run the same narrative. I know quite a few. And then when you confront them and you show them the logical argument, you say, here's the logic. All they say is, well, you're strawmanning. Well, no. You're not straw manning when the logic shows that if there's one defeater to your argument, the proposition's wrong. Simple as that. And so if there was only one definition that you could use, such as like triangles, then that would be correct. It'd be like if you're not a triangle, you're not a triangle or something. Would be yeah. Let's see. You're not a triangle. You're a non-triangle.
Something cannot be a triangle and not a triangle at the same time.
Yeah, but in this case, you can be a theist or not be a theist and not have to be an atheist. There are other options out there. And anybody who tells you otherwise is just simply wrong. You can quote SEP to them, IEP to them, Cambridge, Oxford. And again, if you want to go to the PhDs and people say, well, you're appealing to authority. You're damn right. This is literally an appeal to authority. I am fine with that because these are the experts, Dr. Opie, Dr. Malik, Dr. Merriam. He has a video on something similar. Dr. Moser. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them out there that they'll repeat the same thing. So this is not just my position that I pulled out of my yin yang. Philosophy 101 says the same thing, that you either accept a position, you reject the position, or you suspend judgment, or you disbelieve it. Disbelief would be rejection. So the disbelief of P means that I believe that P is not true, not just I don't believe it. There's they're called three epistemic states. The epistemic state of believing the proposition, the epistemic state of disbelieving the proposition, and the epistemic state of suspending judgment. Okay, so anyways, all right, so
I was always thinking that it seems that the definition that they're trying to push for atheism, I think there's already a pretty good term for what they're trying to represent, and that's the grouping of religious nuns, i.e. those people who don't identify with a religion, those people who put none on a
I got no problem with the nuns. No, I don't have with that, I guess.
It sounds like the same definition that they're trying to do with that, though. It's like, why try to subset the word atheist to cover over something that we already have a pretty good word for?
Oh, because they want us to assume that, because they don't care about the philosophical aspects. This is agenda driven. It always has been. Everybody's pointing out to them. David Silverman even said so. He doesn't care. He's even said it doesn't matter what you think. This is the way it's going to be by fiat. And people have said you're full of crap, David.
The thing is that you can be a religious nun, but that doesn't mean that you might not have a belief in God.
I want to show you something real quick. So I don't know if hopefully, can the outside see this? Can you guys see it internally?
Oh, I remember that. That's the one that convinced me of your position.
Yeah, this is from Dr. Malik's paper, Defining Atheism and the Burden of Proof. A very, very, very good paper. I've spoken to Dr. Malik numerous times on this particular paper. I'm a big fan of it. Now, I think that some of the later on stuff might be a little bit... I don't. He is a Muslim, but the first 90% of it is brilliant. I mean, it's spot on. There's just nothing to be argued against. But he actually really does a great job in discerning between the ontology and the epistemology here, right? So the ontology is the case that theism is the position that God exists. Atheism is a position that God does not exist, because it is one or the other, right? And this is something that Matt Dillahunty hated when I made my flow chart, right? Because the very first question I asked was not a proposition. It was the great debate question. Does God exist? Because if you answer that question no, what does that mean?
That would mean that you're a hard atheist.
Right. And so that requires a burden of proof, blah, blah, blah. And they don't want that. They're like, no. You're that's a complex question fallacy. You're loaded question. No, it's not.
Yeah, I saw the guy gave that response to you on Twitter. That was weird.
Yeah, I've had that. Literally, that they called it a loaded question, which means it's a complex question fallacy. The great debate question for centuries, thousands of years is a fallacy. No, come on. That's just stupid. So the ontology is the case that there is a God or there's not a God. But the epistemology, the soft agnostic position would be that I don't have a position on it either way. I don't affirm this and I don't affirm this. This is a position. It is a second order belief position on this. So it's a belief about a belief. Dr. Malik agrees with that. He's fully down with that. Dr. Malpass agrees with that. He has actually said it's a belief on a belief. I agree with that. So this is the difference between epistemology and ontology. The hard atheist would say we can't know for sure, and they call that the epistemological proposition. So the epistemological proposition is the proposition that God cannot be known. But we're not talking about the epistemological proposition. We're talking about the psychological state of being agnostic on the proposition of theism. And what happens is they have equivocation there. They jump from one proposition, which is the proposition of theism, to the proposition of knowability, which is a completely different epistemological question. which would be hard agnosticism, or I call it Huxley agnosticism. You may refer to it as, right? So I mean, this makes sense though, does it not? I'm not just pulling this again out my yin yang. This is how it's generally thought of in philosophy. Where you go, I really see no deviance from this anywhere.
Well, I'll tell you what, given that chart right there, and I'll probably sound like an idiot saying this, but in my mind, ontologically speaking, everybody's an agnostic.
No, because here's the thing. Look, they can't be. Look, if you're a theist and you hold it to position that God exists, you're no longer agnostic. You made a decision. You're not on the fence anymore. You're not suspending judgment. You have made a judgment. You've said God exists. Right?
Yeah. I guess I'm more thinking about that it really is a proposition that's unknowable.
Well, no. But you're confused. But here's the thing. The knowability has nothing to do with the dostastic claim. Beliefs are dostastic. If I say I believe God exists, that's just a proposition on the ontology. That's not a proposition on the epistemology. And this is what when you hear the expression, you're confusing ontology with epistemology a lot. This is what it means when people say that. Literally, you're confusing an ontological question, which is being, with an epistemological question of how do we know something, or even can we know, right? Because a skeptic would be somebody who says knowledge is not possible. Academic skeptic says, we can't have knowledge. And a Pyrrhonian skeptic would say, and I always pronounce that word incorrectly, but Pyrrhonian skeptic says, we don't even know if we can't even know. So they were like even more skeptical than that. But anyway, so we like charts. I really do. I think these, when you look at stuff like this, it just really kind of hits home, I guess. Does that make sense? Because you even said you looked at this diagram and you said, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah, when you had it all illustrated out in such a way in which it actually correlates everything into different areas, like some sort of box Venn diagram, it made it easier for me to follow where things fall into what categories and how they relate to each other.
All right. Well, how about this one then? Let me explain this one. And by the way, I'm not sure why it's cut off. Why does it? Yeah, this should have the these things down here, but that's okay. It's good enough. Now, this right here is from Dr. Dr. Malpass from his Use of Reason, and this is only one view that's possible. This is one of many views. This is the view that I hold to, though. What this is saying is that if you have a 50% chance that you think there might be a God, or 50% chance or lower that there might not be, there's a little wiggle room in here. He places himself right about here. This is his metric. So in this view, Dr. Malpass would be an agnostic, which means that he doesn't believe P is true and he doesn't believe P is false. None of this deals with knowledge here, right? You notice this isn't KP. This isn't the predicate of knowledge. This is still beliefs.
This kind of looks like the same chart I saw in Richard Dawkins' books, in which he labeled out, I think, what is causing. I lost my thought.
That's okay. So agnostic is basically saying that the theist position is not the case, or he doesn't hold it to be the case, and he doesn't hold the atheist position to be the case. It literally is the middle ground here. And anybody who says otherwise is not paying attention. They're not understanding what the terminology is. In this schema, the theist believes that there are no gods, and the atheist is the contradictory position, right? The negation of that there are no gods. Now, again, you don't have to hold to that schema. My argument is not right now saying which one's better. I can argue that this is a much better schema in many different ways, but that's not the argument being presented. The argument is this schema exists. As long as this schema exists, the statement, if you're a theist, if you're not a theist, you're an atheist, is logically wrong, because this is a different schema that allows for that statement to be false. If there's one defeater to a proposition, the proposition's false. But you notice here as you get to like a certainty, right? One.
Yeah. KP, you know the position to be true, and K not P, you know the position to be not true.
Right. And what does this also entail?
This also entails belief, because you cannot know something without also believing that thing.
Exactly. So if I say that I know God exists, and we'll call that agnostic, we'll call that a Gnostic position, and I'm okay with that, because there's nothing nonsensical by saying that. It's like agnostic atheism is nonsensical in the weak case. Even Matt agrees with that. I've had that conversation with him. I've asked him very just straight up. I said, Matt, is it still your position that agnostic atheism in the weak case, which is not BP, is it nonsensical? He still agrees with that, and he's right, because knowledge is a subset of belief. You can't have a not dostastic position and then try to epistemically modify it. It makes no sense. Who's calling me? Is this somebody who wants to join us, or
I'm totally calling you.
is that you? No, I'm not getting a
No.
phone. Who's getting a phone call? Is that me?
Not me.
I don't know what's going on here.
My phone's off.
You guys don't hear that? I'm not
I
seeing
hear
anything
like,
come
yeah,
up.
a little.
I hear it.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing anything come up. Oh, let me check my. Hang on, real quick. I'm still figuring out Zoom. Nope, nobody's trying to come
Although while
in.
you're trying to figure that out, I'll say, where in the heck were you in 2002? I had this argument with a Christian believer who was trying to get me to believe, and at the time, I literally had no belief at all. So I didn't know one way or the other. Like I had specifically told myself, I don't believe, and this, I understood exactly what I meant. It's like, I don't believe gods exist, but I don't disbelieve gods exist, because I always thought that belief was a positive action. It was something that you did. You believe or you don't believe. You believe X or you believe Y. And I didn't have a belief. I didn't believe that gods didn't exist. I didn't believe gods did exist. I was literally right in the middle. I was like, I have no idea. I don't have enough information to even formulate a judgment on that, because I didn't care one way or the other. So I didn't even bother looking for it. And we went around and around and around one night, because he's like, look, there is no middle position. This is either an either or proposition. If you either believe gods exist or you believe gods don't exist. There is no middle ground. I kept trying to
in classical logic. This is
Yeah,
another thing that people have pointed out to Matt. He kind of neglects multi-valued logic. He kind of neglects things like dialtheism or paraconsistent logic, and especially doxastic logic. Doxastic logic, you can have some weird things happen. And I'm going to add that, I think, to this particular blog, that in doxastic logic, there's a position called normal reasoner. And the normal reasoner says that if you believe P, you believe that you believe P. It's kind of like the KK principle. If you know something, right? So the normal reasoner believes that they believe P. Now, I've talked to this with a few people that have studied Hintinka logic, which is a form of doxastic logic, and they agree that you can easily change that to say a person who does not believe P believes they do not believe P, to be a normal reasoner. And that belief is a belief. So that's a second order belief, which goes back to my other arguments, right? So there's a continuation of all these arguments. It's kind of an overlap in that way. But yeah, you're right. People, they want to say, oh, you don't believe something. No, you have beliefs. Even Matt Dillahunty had a really good video out today, or not today, a couple of days ago. And he was telling atheists, stop saying you don't have beliefs. It makes you look like an idiot. Because as you pointed out, resist very clearly here, in order to have belief or something knowledge, you have to have belief. It is a tripartite commitment that in every single form of analysis of knowledge, one of the conditions is that you believe it.
Yeah, it's because it's impossible for you to say that you know something without also believing that thing too.
Right.
I can't say that I know 1 + 1 = 2 without also believing that 1 + 1 = 2. How could I know 1 + 1 = 2 and still say, well, I don't really believe it. I know it though, but I believe it.
Makes no sense, right?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. Now let me clarify something. There are papers out there that have argued you can have knowledge without belief. It is not what we're talking about. It is not an analysis of logic. They're using it in a very different types of terminology, using more of an explicit type of knowledge. So it's not the same thing. So you go, well, I have this paper that says, oh, you can have knowledge without belief. That's not what they're arguing. I've read those papers. Her name's Dr. Something with an S. I can't remember. But I mean,
YouTube scholars that just read the title of the page and said, see, this agrees with me.
All right. So this is from Stanford Encyclopedia, the tripartite analysis of knowledge. S knows that P, if and only if P is true, S believes P, S is justified believing P. Now, again, there are other forms of knowledge. This is just a very simple one. You don't have to accept it. I don't, but it's okay. It still works for a very basic understanding. But here, S believes P. So stop saying that you don't believe anything, because you're literally telling people that you cannot know anything. It makes you look very foolish in the eyes of an educated theist, or even an educated atheist, or anybody that understands that you have to have beliefs to have knowledge. And by the way, don't mind the trolls that are thumbing down. They all go away, and I usually on these types of videos turn them off anyways eventually. So it just helps me get ranking. It's fine.
I don't know who it was the other day in a chat or in a video was trying to argue that belief was a subset of knowledge.
I've seen that, and when you ask them for evidence of that, they're like, they don't have any. I've actually had people that I know say that, and you say, okay, give me a citation. Well, I don't need one. Then you're dismissed. Why is it that I can provide citations? I have a list of citations that I have. Okay, so again, anybody can go read about this stuff. It's not, don't believe me. You don't have to believe me. Read for yourself, for Pete's sake. They don't have any.
It's the opposite that's true. Knowledge is a subset of belief, and source for that would be any 101 philosophy textbook.
Clearly.
Well, philosophy, but I'll tell you what would science look like if belief was a subset of knowledge?
It looked like theism.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't think it's shitty to turn off dislikes when all you have is trolls coming over. I don't care at that point. The dislikes are going away, by the way. You know, YouTube's getting rid of them.
Was it going to go like Facebook and Twitter, where the only comment is just thumbs up? Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. So all it does is help me get rankings. So let them have it. And then they would go away if it's a bot anyways. But here, look at citation needed. Here are my citations. I've read every one of these. I wouldn't cite it if I didn't read it. And a lot of papers I don't even talk about. Armstrong was a great paper explaining the differentiation between knowledge as certainty and knowledge as merely justified belief or without certainty, right? Called a strong belief condition or a weak belief condition. Great paper on that. And these are all, you can go read these things. So anybody wants to go check out my citations, there you go. And this is by all means not exhaustive by any means. Actually, you know what's funny is I don't even have a link to that on my blog. You have to search for it manually. You got the URL up there. All right. So anyway, so let's move on here, and then we'll get back to the live chat. There are two ontological possibilities. Assume God is equal God's fair argument. Now, I really hate getting bogged down in myopic things where people say, well, which God you're talking about? I've already addressed the atheist position. If you want to argue atheism, go for it. Don't do it around me. I don't care. I really don't think it is a viable position, but if you think it is, that's great. Take it, run with it. But I'm not going to sit there and spend 2 hours to tell you what we mean by God if all of us in the Hangout understand it. Okay, I think we're by now with 2,000, 4,000, whatever years of dialogue of the word God, you have to have some kind of working understanding of it. If you don't, then you need to catch up with the rest of the class. It's just a waste of time for people to sit there and say, well, I don't know what you mean by God. Okay, well, you know what? Go read, find out something you think that works, and then come back to during the discussion. You're behind the curve. I'm not going to waste my time with it.
Obviously,
that's a description of an argument with Darth Dawkins.
Oh, God. Yeah, well, Darth Dawkins is the definitive Mr. Molasses of conversations. Can he not bog down any conversation to a grinding halt and even make go backwards in time?
Everyone knows that the one true God is the God of bacon, so obviously they should know what God is.
I finished that with a half pound of bacon today, by the way.
Good. It's good.
All right, so
can I derail something really quick? I just saw this and it just jumped out at me. So I just came out to get some coffee. I've been sitting back in my bedroom. I'm actually home, thank God. I got snowed in. We just got almost 1.5 feet of snow, which is very unusual for Western Washington. So my Jeep is stuck in the driveway because the front drive shaft isn't installed. So I only have 2-wheel drive on my pickup. Came out to make coffee, and there's a Tupperware bin with a bunch of blueberry muffins in it. And on top of it is a folded card that says, from my wife, says, I made muffins. I also made this sign alerting you to them. In parentheses behind that, that's how you know they aren't poisoned. XOXO.
I'm glad that your wife has to let you know that they're probably not poisoned. If there's any, if you have a concern that people might be poisoning your muffins, you might want to get that taken care of. You might want to look into that.
I saw that and I just started laughing.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, actually.
That's how we know they're not poisoned. They're alerting me to their presence.
I was going to point out something silly with the bacon joke that we were making just a second ago. Over at my job, I work lunch meat at Kroger because that's the first place they could hire me, and I'm still trying to find other places. But the customers will come up to me working in the bacon, and they'll ask me my opinion, going like, which bacon is the best bacon? And I'll tell them the best bacon is the bacon. It's really that simple. And they're like, no, like, which brand? And it's like, look, if you order a cheeseburger at a restaurant and they gave you a bacon cheeseburger without charging you extra, would you be complaining about the brand of the bacon? No, you wouldn't.
I like applewood bacon smoked.
Yeah.
Thick cut. That's my favorite. And by the way, Canadian bacon, yes, it's technically bacon. It's not bacon. Screw you people in Canada. All right. So let's go on.
That's why they have to put the adjective on it.
All right. So sodium chloride still doesn't get this. This is what I'm really have to questions people's foundational understanding. I literally just got explaining this, and he says that agnosticism is not the position between theism and hard atheism. The fuck it's not. I mean, the fact that I just literally explained it and it showed you that it is quite dishonest when people say that's not what it is. That's when they have an agenda. That's dogma. That's ideological. That is absurd, because that is not how it is in any philosophy book you're going to read. And stop saying that, because I literally just showed you that's exactly what it is. All right. So moving on. Hey man, I'll eat Canadian bacon. Don't get me wrong, but if I order bacon, I want freaking bacon, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You want that stuff sizzling, cracking.
Yeah.
Canadian bacon is ham.
It's Sandring. Are you there? It's ham, right? Well, technically,
yeah,
but it's from the pork. It's from the pork underbelly or something, isn't it? Or shank. Sandring. So I answered this question for this person who doesn't seem to be understanding this. They say, defining atheism is something that atheists don't define it as kind of dishonest. Am I being dishonest here?
No.
Okay.
No, you're not being dishonest. No.
Exactly. So stop calling people dishonest when they're telling you things that go against your narrative just because you don't understand the topic. That's what's dishonest. Okay. Nobody in here is dishonest, because we're explaining to you things that you may not have experience with or that you have ever read about. Don't parrot the party line. Go read on your own.
Yeah, learn. One of the hardest things I had to learn, and it was before I could really learn much of anything at all, was I had to learn I could be wrong, and that I didn't like being wrong, and that I wanted to be right. So when I found areas where I was wrong, I needed to change my beliefs or my thinking, so that I wasn't wrong anymore. And a lot of people have a very difficult time. My mother, I got this from my mother. My mother's this way. It doesn't matter how wrong she is. Once she's taken a position on something, she sticks to it no matter what. And she just won't admit that she's wrong. And that's where I got it from growing up that way. It was my example.
Yeah, and I don't mind being wrong. Look, I was wrong on the inflammable. But see, the difference is after I thought about it, right? I was like, okay, shit, yeah, you're right, right?
Yeah.
We all make mistakes. Who gives a shit? You just don't double down on stuff that you eventually find out is wrong. Like I was like, shit, I had to think about that, and it's something that I should have known, right? I went to firefighter school, right? I mean, I did actually fight fires. Not fun, but yeah. So I mean, you just go, shit, okay, I was wrong. Big freaking deal. Move the hell on.
When it comes to understanding that you might be wrong, the first thing you need to do is study first Kent Hovind and do what he doesn't do. That's exactly what you do. You look at Kent Hovind and you're like, hey, he's been proven wrong. This is his reaction. Don't do that.
Oh, you know what we found out about that, by the way, Resist, last night? People had pointed it out to me and I spotted it, but I didn't capture it either. Last night, Kent on his channel, he had a link in the video description going back to the Non Sequitur show. So how would he, why would he have sent a link to us if the original discussion that we had with him, the original intent of the programming to be that he was going to come on our channel? Of course he knew that. He outright lied. I mean, he's just, we all know he's dishonest, but it's, for God's sake, if it'd be that blatant about it. And we have the phone call, which Steve said, well, you have proof that you called him. Are you really going to doubt me? I mean, like my honor isn't somehow in question compared to Ken Hovind's. Are you fucking kidding me?
This is probably one of the most documented lies that Kent has been caught in. This should be the nail in the coffin for anyone who thinks that he doesn't lie to people.
It's not, though. They don't care. Creation is, and people are going to get on me. I'm not trying to say the creationist and people that don't understand this stuff are on the same epistemic level. I'm not, but there are similarities. The people that always say that I'm wrong usually, to me, have a very similar dogmatic creationist mindset. They don't look at the facts. They don't look at the evidence. They don't look at the logic. They don't look at the reason, and they certainly don't look at any literature. The last time I had a person cite to me a paper to refute me, wait, I don't think it's ever happened. If it is, I certainly don't remember it.
Well, there's that guy that cited the
Except for Anthony
American
Flew.
Atheist.
Well, the only example, they've cited me Presumption of Atheism by Anthony Flew in 1972. Like, I haven't read that before. Please. Okay. So anyways.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on here. So there are, God exists or he does not exist. This is a dichotomy. There are no other possibilities. Logically, this gives us A or not A, which is called the law of excluded middle. And when you instantiate, which means you just take a word and you put it in there, basically, this is a little more complicated, but theist or not theist, right? So this is how it is. You're a theist or you're not a theist. That is a dichotomy in classical logic. What they try to do is they try to artificially, by semantic fusion, Dr. Malik calls it, and I like that term, semantic fusion, will make not theist to equal atheist. And that's they can do that. Nothing wrong with that for them. They want to do that, but you cannot say that has to be for everybody, because that's not the case. That's an artificial semantic distinction that they are doing because of their political, ideological positions. So
I have a
go ahead.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you were talking about, you'd asked the question, are we being dishonest, or are you being dishonest?
Right. I get that frequently, and it's just comical, because I mean, I've been on YouTube 5 years, and I'm probably one of the most reputable people around. I've never lied to anybody. I've been honest to a fault. He's even got me in trouble by being honest, because I couldn't reveal certain things that have been told to me in private, because I won't do that unless somebody gives me permission to, and it kind of fucked me. But I hold to my honor and my integrity.
Yeah, well, what I don't understand is making something like that doesn't make much sense to me. Because if you're being dishonest, you're being dishonest for a reason. That you have an agenda. Otherwise, why would you be dishonest? I mean, I guess there's pathological liars that lie just because they're compelled to. But why would you have?
We all have agendas, though. I mean, my agendas, though, is just I want people to understand these topics. But I don't think that's really it's not a political agenda. But
There's no like I don't understand what an agenda would be for putting forward saying, hey, look, there's
I'm not a theist, right? I'm not trying to promote theism or creationism or even agnosticism. I actually talked somebody out of agnosticism the other day, so I'm not even trying to do that.
You're not a very good pope of agnosticism with that, then.
What?
I can understand a theist, being dishonest. They're pushing an agenda. They want other people. Of course. I can see, people like the atheist, the people from the atheist experience. I just drew a blank on the organization.
American, the atheist
and the public speakers. Yes, and the atheist speakers that are going out and trying to. I mean, they're pushing an agenda as well.
Yes.
They're saying, look, I think that our world would be a much better place if it was more secular. I'd like to get more people exposed to atheism and normalize it and start, because I think once you wipe away some of the stigma that has built up around atheism. I don't think
that's a bad argument, though. I'm not criticizing their
no, I'm not criticizing that agenda either, because I agree with them. I think that the world probably would be a better place without, religion. And at least getting it so that there is no stigma around atheism. They're just like, oh, you're an atheist? Oh, great, and move on. And so, those two ends, I can clearly see an agenda there. And so when somebody says you're being dishonest in pursuit of something, I can say, okay, well, I guess that could be a possibility. Let's look at that. But when somebody comes up and says, when you're saying, wait, there's a middle ground here saying, I don't believe either one of these propositions, that there are gods or no gods exist. I'm agnostic. I'm not making a judgment on that call. And they're like, well, you're being dishonest. Dishonest? Why?
I couldn't tell you exactly. I have no idea.
I find the fact that you list so many citations for every single thing that you talk about is a very, very big sign of your honesty.
I do definitely source myself, and yet I get accused of that being a fallacy. Oh, that's a fallacious use of authority. No, it's not. What the hell's wrong with you?
That's the fallacy of citation. How dare you give me citations? I don't want to read.
Citation fallacy. There you go.
See, I think I identified where a big problem might lie. Just above where you scrolled down to, it had the statement, God exists or God does not exist, that dichotomy. Mm-hmm. And in reality, that is the case. Either God exists or God does not exist. And what they're doing is it's a topical error. They're saying that that proposition, either God exists or God doesn't exist, applies to their beliefs or knowledge, and that's just not the case. It's like a different subject. There can be a middle ground when you're talking about your beliefs. I mean, even though that dichotomy holds true for reality, it doesn't hold true when you're talking about beliefs.
Right, because beliefs are not dichotomous. You can have many different types of beliefs.
It's like they're saying God exists or does not exist are the two answers, but they're also trying to say that's also the two positions that you can take. But just because those are the two answers doesn't mean that those are the only positions that you can take on the question for this.
Well, that's why I keep saying they confuse ontology with epistemology.
Yeah.
For that very reason. And I wish I had my notes here from, I had some Philosophy 101 stuff that I found that I have it on my laptop, so I can't show you. But you can go maybe try to find it later, or I'll find a few and I'll put it in there. But the notes actually have said, there are 3 epistemic states. You believe the proposition, you disbelieve the proposition, or you suspend judgment. So how is it dishonest to suspend judgment and say, look, I don't have enough evidence either way. I don't think the proposition is true, and I don't think it's false. I'm suspending judgment on it. That's the same thing that a weak atheist is basically doing. And yet nobody calls them dishonest. I only call them dishonest when they do it and they claim that is a viable position. And that does require a burden of proof. And it does require a burden of proof, just like agnosticism requires a burden of proof.
See, some people propose that Steve is the Pope of agnosticism, and some people propose that Steve is not the Pope of agnosticism. And I accept neither of those propositions.
Yeah, you can not carry the way, right?
That was the joke I made earlier when you said you talked someone out of agnosticism. I said, well, you're not very good Pope of agnosticism then.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, people are like, why don't you talk to Matt? Matt blocked me. Why do I haven't look, I'm not going to try to carry on vacation with a guy that blocks me. So why bother? Right. Now he said he would talk to me on this channel, or not this channel, but on Secular Show or Atheist Edge. And I'm kind of okay with that. But I got to tell you, I really don't think I give a crap either way, because he's already straw man me to no end. He's already got on 4 shows and put forth positions that I do not have. He keeps telling people that I'm a prescriptivist, which I'm not. But one thing, prescriptivism actually means something different. Prescriptivism actually is a non-cognitivist position that relates to morality, saying that something like stealing is wrong means don't steal, right? You're prescribing that to mean a declarative or directive, don't steal. But a prescriptivist, the way he's using it, which is not wrong, but he's saying that I'm prescribing uses to a words that you must use it this way. No, I've never said anybody has to use these words these ways. My argument has always been, you can't tell me that I have to use your what's called sensu lato, or generalized word usages that you use in your little communities. Sure, use them in your little communities. Guess what? The world doesn't give a shit about your little communities. Okay, there's a much bigger thing out there. Who's got that noise? All right, so let's move in here. So
you might be hearing my cat. She's making herself at home in one of her boxes.
Yeah, can we mute, because people get really upset by that, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Thanks. George says he doesn't have 4 shows. Okay, so I'm a liar. He was on American Atheist. That's one show. He was on Atheist Edge. That was another show. And he was on Seth Andrews' show. That was another show. And he was on his Patreon. That was another show, George. So, I love when people like, oh, you're trying to criticize me. It's like, I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Jesus Christ, man. I'm so sick of people just throwing out argument to be argumentative, right? Like, I don't have reasons for what I say. But anyways, but beliefs about these ontological states are not dichotomous. One can believe God exists, theist, believe God does not exist, atheist. And a lot of people are like, well, Steve's straw manning atheism there. No, I'm not. Go read a book. Believe all God talk is meaningless, which would be an ichtheist. Also could be a theological and cognitivist, but I differentiate between the two for reasons. Belief the proposition of God existing is not truth apt. That is a theological and cognitivist. They're saying that the proposition is not true. Believe, I got to put a comma there. Believe one doesn't even care one way or another. Apatheist. Believe one doesn't have enough information either way to form a position. That's evidential agnosticism and many, many others. So when you start shoehorning all these different things into one term, like atheist, you lose nuance, right? If you're just going to say, well, anybody who doesn't have a belief is an atheist, you've just nullified this position completely. It can't even exist, even though it cannot be an atheist position, because that's a category error. And you nullified agnosticism. You basically said it's no longer a viable position. And so that's why most people that understand these concepts understand that that type of schema is just not really a great way to go. Now, if you want to do it, that's great, but don't force it on other people. I'm not forcing you to do the more philosophical way of doing it, whatever, all right, so let's move on here, and then I'll get to the live chat. What Matt seeks to do is to place all those nuanced beliefs under not theist, and then simply by his decree, by fiat. That means that they're all atheists by using a sensu lato definition. This means broadly, merely by lacking belief. This prevents anybody from using a more formal, stricter definition, sensu stricto, narrower, because of, as David Silverman and Pam Whistle, editor-in-chief of American Atheist, have said, their goal is politically motivated and to get as many people under the name atheist, regardless of it being philosophically incorrect or not. Is Sandring, you pointed this out before you even read this part. This is exactly what you said. This is not uncommon knowledge. They've actually said
it. They've said it. The way that they go about it. I mean, because I've watched the Atheist Experience, not religiously, but I've, when I'm sitting down in a truck stop, and it was the Atheist Experience that actually started me down the road of critical thinking, not just about gods, but about most things. It's what got me interested in philosophy. It's what got me interested in
and
logic.
I like watching them too.
Yeah,
and so I hate they have blind spots.
Yeah, they started it. I mean, watching Matt Dillahunty, that's what started it. Watching his debates, that's what started me on the critical thinking path and starting to really, get an interest. Because when I'm sitting for 11 hours every day just behind the wheel with nothing better to do than stare out the window, I was getting intellectually stunted. There wasn't a lot, going on there, and it was, I was intellectually hungry for some sort of content to stimulate my mind. And that really got me thinking about all this stuff and got me where I am now. And just watching all of their programs, it became very clear that they've said it on the show several times that was their goal was to, normalize atheism and to try and defeat many of the theist hold on especially the States, because they would go through and read some of the, like Matt Dillahunty did a speech, and I don't remember what it is. I was just lost on YouTube one day, but he brought up the story of a little girl whose father had died. I don't remember how. And the little girl ended up committing suicide. And on her suicide note, it said that she couldn't stand being away from her father. She wanted to go join her father in heaven. And, and he pointed out that, without religion, that wouldn't have happened.
I agree. And that's a different argument, though. And I mean, it's depressing, but I that's another topic altogether. And I've had that discussion as well. You're right. Is religion, there's the downside outweigh the benefits. And I think it's a viable thing to talk about. You're right. Because you hear these things, you hear all these atrocities and you go, what the hell? Right.
Yeah. They make it pretty clear what their goal is,
but do the ends justify the means? Look at
I hadn't read here.
That's the problem. If you're going to take the high road, take the high road. Don't pick and choose. Right. But when you're putting out this narrative that most people now are starting to realize is not correct, there are other things out there. Because I get people all the time, you have to be a theist or an atheist. That is so wrong. It's not even funny. You're literally arguing to me like evolution claimed we came from a rock at that point. That is your level of understanding of epistemology. And it makes you look stupid. It makes you look silly. Stop doing it. But anyways, I'm not going to read the rest of here. You can kind of like just get the gist. I've already mentioned about Machiavellian, but he's just wrong. The fact of the matter is that he's logically incorrect, and it's a fallacy of ambiguity. It actually is, because you're making the term atheist to be so watered down to the point of not having any real meaning to it, just because you want political numbers. Now, I want to show you one other thing before I turn it over to the live chat. I know we got a lot of people watching this morning. But let me show you guys this real quick. Here we go. So this is I don't think I've showed this before. I show it. I mean, I've had it for a while, since January, but I want to real quick explain to people agnosticism in 3 ways. And if I've done it before, then I'll do it again. But it's really important, because when I hear people say something like Gnosticism deals with knowledge, all I think to myself is, this person just parroting. They really don't understand it. Is it a false statement? Not necessarily, but it's not really how this word is being utilized in this particular context. It's an equivocation issue going on. So the word agnosticism is polysemous. It has a number of different meanings in philosophy. One of which is a little more archaic meaning, right, is that this Thomas Huxley's view of what's called a normative epistemological principle. This principle is very similar to evidentialism, which means that in order to believe something, you have to have some type of reasons to believe, evidence, physical evidence, empirical evidence to believe it, or even logical positivism, which is nothing has any kind of real meaning unless it could be proven using logic, or empiricism rather than rationalism, which also holds to the principle nothing could be, there's nothing, if it cannot be validated, observed, or learned by experiment, you can't have justification for it. Not just knowledge, but belief too. Thomas Huxley believed that what he called the modern Gnostics of his day, the people that said, I believe God exists, or I know God exists, were just as unjustified as the atheist saying, I believe God exists, or does not exist, or I know God does not exist. He believed that either one of them were unjustified to do so. Now, the problem with logical positivism, the reason why you don't hear much about it any longer, it was a precursor to the scientific method, but it had a huge flaw in it, and that was called verificationism. And maybe you resist. Maybe you can kind of spot the flaw. Verificationism is the philosophy that nothing can be really considered to be valid unless it can be verified. Now, think about this. How would you go about validating that expression? You can't. It's self-refuting.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
It's circular. And so the problem with verificationism is whether it's a circular argument. You can't even validate that the only thing that's meaningful is something you can be validated, because you're just assuming that it's an axiom, right? So
yeah,
that's why the scientific method has been changed and modified to be more of the methodological approach, right? Rather than logical positivism.
If you took that route, you wouldn't really have science as it is today.
Correct, because a lot of science is not empirically validated.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah, and we have functional uses for all these different things of science now that we wouldn't be able to actually consider true through that methodology, because a lot of it is just the best understanding of what we have right now. And the second that we can find something better, we would get rid of that and replace it with the new thing that's even better.
Right, exactly. Thank you, JJ. Says Steve is logically correct, and I don't understand why anybody refuses with this, because they are literally just repeating dogma, what they heard, rather than going check for themselves. That's it. Anyways, so the other numbers too. This is called a epistemological proposition. Agnosticism, it means, in this case, the knowledge of gods is unknowable. Okay? And nobody's going to disagree with that, right? Somebody says that agnosticism is a epistemological proposition. Sure, it can be. But that's not how it's utilized in the proposition of theism. Do you see the equivocation going on? If you're talking about the proposition of theism, you cannot then change the proposition to something else relating to epistemology. You're changing to a question about the ontology to a question about epistemology. So even though this is a valid thing, if this is all you know about agnosticism, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because that's not how it's used here.
It's kind of like saying, well, let's talk about how good this baseball player is. And then someone says, well, what about the football?
Somebody asked me, Steve, what's your background? I don't think you're aware of what goes on in a lab. No, I just qualified as a nuclear reactor engineer for, well, I shouldn't say the word engineer because it's not technically it is, they call it that, but nuclear reactor supervisor for 2 reactor core systems, D2G and 1,2G, including all secondary and primary chemistry work, laboratory technician. I'm not an idiot, so I do understand scientific methods. Okay.
Nah, that doesn't qualify you at all. I mean, it's only nuclear science.
Yeah, I mean, I only just didn't finish my bachelor's degree, even though I have enough credits, more than enough credits for one, including lab work. And I took physics, I took chemistry, I took astronomy. But yeah, well, whatever. Okay, so number 3, modern usage of the word agnosticism. This is the key thing. Is merely the belief, and this is a key thing, the belief. People say, oh, Steve, it's dealing with knowledge. You hear it parroted all the time. Jacqueline Glenn says it, well, she used to say it a lot. It's wrong. Listen to the Lucifer Almighty in the live chat there. Agnosticism is the belief that one is not justified to say a truth value of true or false to P, or assign a truth value, where P is at least one God exists, or at least existed, right? Somebody had commented, well, what happens if God doesn't exist anymore? I'm going with B theory of time. It's not a tense thing. So it's a God existed or ever has existed, right? If you believe that there's ever been a God or is a God, good enough for me. That's a theist. So in this usage, the person has attempted to evaluate the proposition, but believes they have not had sufficient justification to say P is true or P is false, and therefore suspending judgment on P. You can go read this on Dr.
Right.
Silverman.
Well,
Faith of God doesn't exist anymore. I'm going with
Is that
Beether.
me?
Who's doing that thing? Oh, that's Jim. Sorry, Jim, I had to mute you. So Dr. Jane Silverman had wrote a paper called Suspending Judgment from New York University. She explains this very thing of suspending judgment. She gets a little more myopic, and it's not easy to follow, but it's a good paper. But again, read the papers. In this context, this is the psychological state per SEP, as opposed to the normative epistemic state or epistemological position of being agnostic on P, or somebody who has tried to evaluate P but does not believe P is true or not believe it's false. Now, by showing you the three different ways this word can be used, you no longer have any reason to say, oh, agnosticism is just dealing with knowledge. That's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. It doesn't answer a different question. When you hear atheists goes on these shows and say, well, atheism deals with belief, but agnosticism deals with a different question altogether, you're going to refer them back to this particular blog or to Silverman's paper, or not Silverman. Yeah, that's her name, Jane Silverman, isn't it? Anybody know? You're going to make me look up. Anyways, you can at least tell them, no, this is a belief position on the fact that you're suspending judgment on it. What is her name? So you can go look it up. It bugs me. I don't remember her last name. Jane Friedman. I'm sorry, not Silverman. Jane Friedman on a paper called Suspending Judgment. And she also wrote another paper called Why Suspending Judgment. I never finished that one. I'm going to have to finish it one of these days, but I'm going to bookmark it right now and do it for later. All right. So anyways, moving on with that. Let's go back to the live chat and get Jim in here real quick. Jim. Hi, Jim. Jim.
Jim.
Jim. You have to unmute Jim.
He's dead, Jim.
Okay, there we go.
Jim, I'm a doctor, not a philosopher.
What's up, guys? Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. What's up?
Andrew says, got to leak to your thesis, my dude. Why would I write a thesis? I'm not a PhD. I didn't get a master's degree. Why do I write a thesis? People ask the weird questions sometimes. I have a blog, and my blog is called 3AM Philosophy, which is actually read by PhDs. I actually even know that the guy from the Sandwalk, the biologist, what's his name? Moran, Dr. Moran, he even reads it. He's not a big fan of it, but I know he reads it. But
Well, that's good. I mean,
I would like to point this or say this about it is one of the things is about persuasion and getting people to understand issues is to draw attention to them. And I know a lot of people have made the argument that, you know, your argument against all of this stuff and your agnosticism and all this is fairly pedantic argument, and they're getting tired of it. And I look at it as, you know, I'm happy that somebody's out there doing that instead of just letting it all be swept under the rug, and at least somebody saying, no, wait a minute, this isn't quite right. This, you know, look at this, think about this. And at least you're, you know, even the people who are like, well, this is pedantic, it's annoying, you're wrong. All of those people are still drawing attention to your arguments.
yeah, and I don't think the word, you know, pendant is actually applicable. I think that if somebody's logic is wrong, it's wrong. You don't have to be a pendant for that. You know, if somebody says something that's wrong, especially in our community, right? If we just let things slide, why are we any different than creationists with that mindset? If we're just going by, let's toe the party line and let's do ideology over facts and reason and logic, then what high ground do you have?
You don't.
Right. And that's what I mean. You're dragging everybody back into the whole, no, you really need to think about this, and you need to be, you know, correct on these things and not just say, well, we're just going to go ahead and, you know, spread this word out to almost no meaning at all. And, you know, in pursuit of just a political agenda, you know, you're still coming back saying, no, these things, you know, words matter. They have usages, and, you know, we need to be aware of what's correct and what isn't.
That's part of the problem right there, is that a lot of people, especially here in America, take to the idea that thinking is hard and they just don't want to do it.
Well, I got to tell you, you know, somebody had mentioned earlier, I think it was a Sandring that said, you know, people just maybe not be able to grasp these things. And, you know, I had a little pushback on that because I literally get messages every day just about people thanking me. And I wouldn't even say it almost every day. I think pretty much every day I get at least one or two, either instant message or a comment, people saying, I've never heard of this before. I've never been exposed to this before. Your arguments make sense. I just seem to be spearheading this, but I'm not the only one that actually agrees with this and will comment on it. There's a lot of people on Twitter that are promoting it as well. The Wiz does, New Stoics does, and these are atheists. They're hardcore atheists. They're actually even anti-theist, and they agree with me.
I also want to point out that both sides of the argument start off the same way. They both start off with, I haven't heard of this before. And it all depends on how they receive that. If they receive it and immediately reject it because they haven't been introduced to it yet, well, that just shows you their unwillingness to accept new information. And if they have heard it before and they reject it based on the premise that they've researched it before, well, then they're rejecting on the basis that you're not providing any new information, or assuming that you're not going to provide any new information.
So wait, so you're saying that they think that my arguments are just like a typical theist argument or something?
No, just that they haven't heard it before.
Oh yeah, and yeah, that's true. And what's funny is when they ask for like, okay, well, show me your evidence, and I'll inundate them with evidence, and yet they'll go, no, well, that doesn't count. Well, why not? Well, because I have a dictionary.
Right.
I'm like, so wait a minute, you have a dictionary. That's like kind of like bringing finger paints to an art class in college. That's kind of like saying macaroni art's modern art. You look at don't bring a dictionary to a philosophical discussion. You're gonna look like a moron.
Hey,
And dictionaries aren't prescriptive anyway.
Yeah, what John?
Speaking of dictionaries, not to be pedantic myself, but something that I've noticed you doing is the word is pedant.
Pendant, yeah.
No, not pendant.
Pedant. Yeah.
Pedant.
Yeah, I've always done that for a very long time, and you're right, John. And I do know what it is, but I always seem to put an N in there. I don't know why.
And another thing I want to say real quick, Jim
Pedant.
Majors, excellent job with Dean S. Majors.
Didn't he? Stroke him. Stroke Jim. He needs it. He deserved it.
I've seen some people try to reach him, with reason, and I knew that was not at all possible. So I figured I would just shut him down in the most humiliating way possible.
And the idea that he thought that Family Guy meme
that was bizarre.
was evidence that your
and that was it.
That was it. That Atheist Republic because of Family Guy meme.
It just was unbelievable.
Hey, look at Jim knows. If I thought Jim did a shitty job, I wouldn't have hold punches. I wouldn't probably criticize him in public for it and actually like him as my friend. But I would be like, hey, Jim, I think you kind of fucked up the pooch here, or you could have done this better. But I have no criticisms by his performance. I thought it was spot on, A+.
The term is screwed the pooch.
I make my own shit up. I'm allowed to mix metaphors.
Don't.
What did he say? What did he say?
I don't know. Screwed up the pooch.
Screw the pooch.
Screwed up the pooch.
You screw your pooch your way. I'll screw mine.
Fair enough.
Don't judge.
Will be taken out of context and plastered everywhere.
Exactly. That'll be on the next Twitter. The Geek Room does that. They take things out of context and put it out there. And it's like,
so long as the pooch gives consent, you got to make sure the pooch gives consent.
Yeah. Well, if the dog didn't say no.
Hey, something I want to point out. I don't know whether it was I think it was in your guys' stream last night. Okay, myself, Colorado biker prepper, and that one troll, Jesus is Lord.
Oh yeah.
We were going back and forth with one another. Now, someone had asked him, Jesus is Lord said something like, "Well, I take that on faith." So someone asked, "Well, what do you mean by faith?" And Jesus is Lord posted the definition of faith that says, well, you have trust in someone's abilities, or something along the first definition of it. He didn't post the religious context definition. And so I and Colorado Biker Prepper were calling him out on equivocation. And his response right immediately back was, no, equivocation fallacy doesn't apply to words that can be used in different contexts.
Right. Equivocation is when you use equivocation is when you use the same word differently in the same argument. I use faith all the time because I believe in faith-based commitment. Right? I think that atheists do a disservice when they stop using certain words that have a good usage, right? Just because a theist can use it, sure. Then you call the theist out for it. If the theist if you use the word faith and a theist says, "Oh, you got faith too," ream their ass on it. Go to town on them. Call them out on it. But you cannot say we don't have faith-based commitments. We do. There's nothing wrong with that. But this term epistivus is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. It's a dumb term.
But okay, so where I usually use hope in placement of
You can, yeah.
just because with hope you
Well,
at
no,
least
actually, no,
have
you
some
can't.
sort of priori evidence that it is going to happen.
No, they're not synonymous,
Like
though.
for instance, like you can say like I hope that I get that I have a good paycheck, you know.
Yeah, but they're not synonymous. Look at, do you hope that reality is real? No, you have faith that reality is real because you have a faith-based commitment that is external to your mind. That's not hope.
No, I would
Just
say,
like the topic we were just discussing
Why would you
over
hope
last hour. I have faith that Steve knows his shit talking about that. I mean, and that's
a confidence, man. That's all it means.
Yeah.
That's confidence. But
Yeah.
you know,
right? Yes,
I would say
synonymous with the hope you're talking about.
So I got a question for you. I'm going to let Jim answer this question. Mr. Autopan says, and if everybody used logic correctly the way you do, they'd be agnostic, right? I don't know how that follows. It doesn't make any sense to me. Can anybody grasp what they mean by that? Because I don't get it. If you use the logic I'm using, how are you agnostic on propositions? I'm not. There's many propositions I'm not agnostic on.
yeah.
I
So,
think-
Okay.
so
Like, for example, one sec. The youngest creationist God. That God does not exist. I'm not agnostic on that particular God. I am firmly in the camp that I believe. I actually would even say that I know, because I can build an epistemic case for that. It could be very long if you ask me to do so. So I don't want to justify that right now, but I think that I can make a very good case. I could argue that I know. Now, you could argue contrary to that, and there's something to be said epistemologically, but I sure the hell believe very strongly that God does not exist if it's contingent upon the earth being 6,000 years old. I'm not agnostic on that.
Well, and I also think that you can understand logic and still come to the conclusion that a God exists.
You can, okay, run that by me again.
I think that you can still understand logic. You can
And
still, you know.
And believe God? Yes. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. There's there's a lot of smart people that believe in God, right? Here's the misconception that a lot of people have. If you believe in God, you must have an illness. You're mentally deranged or something. No. If you're delusional, that is a misfunction of the brain. That means the brain is doing something it's not supposed to do, whether by the mind or the physical substrate, which we call the brain. Just having a false belief is not a delusion. Now, can a delusion be? Can you have a false belief that is a delusion? Yes, but they're not exactly the same thing, right? If I just believe something that is wrong, that's not delusional. Now, if I think that maybe I'm talking to Jesus and Jesus is telling me to go out and kill my family, that's delusional.
Yeah.
You can't make the distinction there. There's a problem.
I think what the people are saying with how if everyone uses logic in the same way as you do that everyone would be agnostic. I think what they might be saying, and I don't think they're right on this, but I think what they might be saying is that since it's not actually possible to prove the existence of any sort of God, that we have to remain agnostic on the proposition that God
these are beliefs positions. You don't prove anything.
Yeah.
I can't prove aliens exist, but I believe they do. I'm justified. I can't prove it. So what?
Like I said, I don't agree with them. I think that's what I'm trying to say that's what they might be saying.
Yeah, it's possible. That makes no sense. You know what? I think what happens is people throw in all these terminologies that muddy the water. They move from dosastic to knowledge. They move from convinced to certainty. They throw in all these caveats, and it just bogs down the conversation. There's a difference between saying I'm convinced that is true, and I'm convinced, and I'm have a strong conviction that is true. Those are different things. I can say I'm convinced, but just barely. Or I can say I'm convinced and I really, really believe this to be the case. I have a strong conviction. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I do it all the time.
That's why I'm an atheist.
But you actually believe there are no gods. Matter of fact, you might be able to make an argument that you can say that there's no gods, but I think it'd be very difficult to do.
I think I could.
But I say I don't think it's possible, only because I'm talking from a skeptic's position now. And people say, well, you're not a skeptic, Steve. That's true. But I can appeal to skepticism. That it's very hard to make a skeptical case that there's no gods.
Right.
But I would like to see one. I'm not saying it's not possible.
Then again, everybody has their own standards of evidence. I mean, and my knowledge, my evidence that I have, it may not prove that no gods exist, but it is justification for me to believe that no gods exist.
Well, in order to make the knowledge claim, though, you have to okay, what theory of knowledge would you be using?
Epistemological, just what I
But you got to pick one. You got to go look at justified true belief, justified true belief plus, consensus theory of knowledge, pragmatic theory of knowledge, Tarski semantic theory of knowledge. This is what I'm saying. In order to build a really good argument for that, you really got to dive into what knowledge is entailed. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but does that mean that you couldn't? I don't know. I just never seen anybody do it. So,
when you're talking about faith, I would say that that for anybody to actually function in society, they always have to at least take the faith position that a reality exists at the very least.
Properly basic, right? And people throw the charge. Well, Steve, how do you know that the younger creationism of God doesn't exist? Well, I could do that with all the knowledge stuff, and I can say that because we've actually do know in science the Earth, the age of the Earth, it's been falsified. If it's been falsified, that's pretty goddamn good justification.
But then they'd come back with the God's all magical powers that he could just make it look like it is such. Instead.
Those are ad hoc, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, when it comes to knowledge, ad hoc doesn't matter. Now, there is something called epistemic luck, but that's a completely different thing.
Yeah, there's that coworker of mine that's every time I'm on break, he's on break too, and we always have a discussion, and he always comes back with things like that whenever I do it. It's like, oh, but he just made it look that way. And
then you say, okay, well, you know what? So what? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. These are bare possibilities. Doesn't mean you don't have knowledge.
Yeah, I point out to them, but no, the world was created by the flying spaghetti monster in 1984, and he just made it created to look like it's already aged. Obviously, that's true. Well,
let me ask you something. If somebody says, you can't know that the flying spaghetti monster doesn't exist, I look at them like they're fucking an idiot. I really do. It's like, yes, I know that they did it because I know the story behind it. It was a parody. That's what it was. I mean,
yeah, it was
knowledge in that because you understand the topic.
That's why I use it with him. I like that parody example, and he normally gets a laugh out of it.
That's how I feel about Yahweh. That's how I feel about.
And I get that. Yeah, I don't fault you for that. I really don't. Right? I just I understand Jim's reasoning. Right? As long as he has a coherent system, I don't have to agree with him. I just want his system to be coherent. It seems coherent to me.
Hey, Steve, I got a question. So when you were talking about Jesus and like if someone was to say if Jesus was to tell me to go kill my family, you're delusional.
By the way, is this JJ? Like, is Jay? That my Jay?
Yeah, this is from Twitter.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Twitter.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I know you are. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was gonna say, what's the difference between that being delusional and then Jesus saying like, oh, we'll go and
that is a very good question.
Medicine to this sick person.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Is the results what make it delusional?
No.
Or like,
not necessarily. No, that's a very, very good question. And I'm going to phrase this very, very specifically because I know Jim's going to pounce on this. We have a different mindset than it is back then. Okay. We have something called the DSM. And we understand differential diagnosis. We understand mental conditions. We understand that in this day and age, it is almost always that we've ever seen a person who has experienced talking to Jesus commanding him to do something has been somebody who has mental issues. We can see that these are actual delusions. We can actually see them on EKG. We know that. Now, back in the biblical days, you can make one of two arguments that people had these experiences and they were forms of delusion. Lucid dreaming, they were epileptic seizures, petit mals. That's a good argument. I think there's something to be said for that, right? Because if we know we have these things today, we know by uniformity of nature, they probably had them back then. But you can also argue that maybe God back then, knowing that the science was not that great, did actually communicate these things to those people. Now, I don't necessarily have to hold to that, but that's what I think a theist would probably argue, something along those lines. But nowadays in 2019, no, I don't think that it holds that if God is telling you to go kill somebody, I'm sorry, I will be on Jim's side and I will be an anti-theist in that regard and say, no, I think you need to go get mental health for that.
Was Abraham, our father, everybody's father.
Well, I don't think that story ever really happened.
Far enough. Do you believe that him being told to kill his son and him?
Yeah, I don't know if that story even happened. I mean, that's more parabolistic.
But would you consider that if it did happen? Would you consider that
nowadays? I would consider that to be delusional. Now in modern terms.
Okay, but even back then,
I don't know. I can't.
Would you be able to justify that?
No, because we don't know. We don't know what it was like back then.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be
Yeah,
hard.
I think
Yeah.
Jay's question was, he was asking, okay, so somebody says they hear Jesus, Jesus is telling them to go kill their family. But what about the person who hears Jesus and Jesus tells them, go feed the hungry?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I still think it's delusional though.
Well,
If that's the case.
And that's what I was searching for, consistency.
Yeah.
That's all I was looking
Because
for.
look, what they're really saying to me is that look, because of my faith, Jesus is telling me to do this, and I'm okay with that. But if they say Jesus came down and spoke with me and said, "Hey, dude, you got to go feed your family," I'm probably going to think they do need some kind of evaluation.
Okay, so it's probably.
I know I would.
I think it's safe to say that, or I believe it's safe to say that it's a delusion either way. But what the important question to ask though is if that delusion is beneficial to humanity, is it immoral?
Good question. Not necessarily. I believe in useful fictions.
Sure.
Well, it's just like, look, a guy has a delusion that he's a chicken, and they say, well, why don't you get him some help? And the answer is, well, we need the egg.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, I would say that,
but I don't think it's a matter of. I don't think it's a matter of if there's something good or bad comes out of it. I think a delusion is literally a mental state. So even if it's a good, it has a good thing or bad thing, I don't think that the fact that it's a delusion is contingent upon that. It's not relevant.
Because even if that person who has the delusion is thinking that Jesus is coming for him and telling him to go feed the hungry and clothe the poor and all that stuff, doesn't mean that the next delusion that's going to hit him is going to still be saying the same positive thing.
Fair point. Yeah.
Okay, so
and most of them do need medical attention. I mean, there's something wrong in the brain. Yeah,
it could be a sign of other things, like it could be a blood clot in the brain that could turn into an aneurysm that's causing them to see certain things, or it could be a tumor.
Good point.
I think Jay's trying to get back in, but his mic's really low.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have my phone down. I'm sorry. I have a very strong feeling that Jim is going to disagree with this, but I asked everyone else. So if someone believes that Jesus is returning, is that delusional?
Ooh.
Would that be delusional? Because that's something that hasn't happened yet. But
see, I would say no, because that's not a delusion. That's could be. Somebody could argue it's a false belief, but that's not. The delusion is something that's actually occurring in the mind, right? You're seeing or hearing something that's actually occurring. In that case, you're just having a false belief. You're not seeing or hearing something that would constitute, to me, would be considered to be a delusion.
Well, and that's descriptive of any Christian too. All Christians believe Jesus will return.
But the only thing is that the delusion is dependent on the scripture, and the scripture refutes the idea that Jesus is going to come anytime because he was already supposed to have come.
You're right.
Couple times.
Long past due.
Yeah. I don't know why Shannon's being triggered, but I don't know in a good way or bad way. I'm not sure if she's agreeing with me or disagreeing. Yeah.
Oh, good gracious!
I think she's agreeing, but I think she's agreeing, but I'm not sure.
Oh, jeez.
Cool.
Who's going off here? What is that noise?
I'm getting a lot of notifications all of a sudden for some reason. Why am I getting so many notifications?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay, they're gone.
I turn most of them off.
I'd like to, but I just recently got this operating system and I don't know how to turn it off just yet.
I mean, if you go to any civilization, any culture, they all have their rituals, that they do. They, for instance, they would do something that in some civilizations that we wouldn't even dream of. They'd take like their gold and their precious metals and sacrifice them to their gods. Like you've got Xibalba, for instance. They would just throw their gold and precious metals and all these things that they created to this god. And but it wasn't really harming anybody. But it does seem strange from our cultural perspective. But it seemed to have benefited them. It didn't really hurt them in any way. But then when you start to move into things like human sacrifices and firstborn sacrifices, and even things like the best of your cattle sacrifices, which in the end would affect the herd. So. You have to take there's a lot you have to take into question.
And can I make a real quick comment?
The first part of what he just said, he said it would be strange to our culture. I say it's not strange to our culture because you just described, how televangelists and people who own these big mega churches, they're taking people's gold as a sacrifice for God or whatever you want to call it. I mean, so it's
Sure.
the same thing that's going on today.
Yeah, by the way, I just got an email from somebody and from Matt Dillahunty too. I'm not interested in debating anybody's channel with Matt. Please stop asking him. All people, I see all these people tagging him and emailing him. Stop doing it. I've never asked to have a discussion with him. I've never asked to debate him. I've never asked to come back on the Non Sequitur show to discuss this. I haven't been bugging him. I haven't been emailing him. I haven't approached him in any way. I'm not interested. If he knows how to find me, if he wishes to, I'm not trying to chase him down. And when you message him, it sounds like that I'm trying to chase him down, and I'm not. He blocked me for a reason, and that's fine. Let it be on his terms. If he wants to come on the Non Sequitur show, he can, but don't care one way or another. I really honestly don't. These are facts that need to get out there. He can address them if he wishes to. He can confront me on them if he wishes to, but to continually bug somebody on it, to me, it doesn't do anybody any good. It's just a waste of everybody's time. That's why I don't call in the atheist experience. I have no desire to. I want people to know this information. I'm not out there to win a political game. I'm not out there to win popularity. This is something I really very strongly in that I can justify with overwhelming freaking evidence. This is why not one of them ever has come to me and said, I want to challenge you on this, Steve. Why doesn't people do that? Oh, yeah, because they don't have the evidence. But I'm always welcome if they do. I've gone on Twitter and said, look, if you want to come on and you want to challenge me on this, that's fine. But bring evidence. Don't bring a dictionary, because if you bring a dictionary, I'm just not going to take you seriously. And speaking of not taking seriously, who's this guy that just showed up? Ocean. I'm sorry.
Ocean's the worst moderator in history.
Dude, he saved your ass so many times. It wasn't for him, you would have got destroyed.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, I don't care that he blocked me. The reason he blocked me was he said he was getting too many notifications. Okay, fair, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I don't get upset if somebody blocks me. Look, I block people all the time. I block people every day. I block people, and people say, "Well, Steve, you're just causing an echo chamber." No, listen. If you are going to waste my time and you tell me, give me an argument, and I give them a logical argument, literally a logical argument, and they don't address it, they don't tell me which premises are wrong, they don't even tell me if it's a logically valid argument, and they just go into diatribe about my character flaws, which they perceive to be, they can piss right off. I have no desire for that or no time. I call people assholes all the time for doing that kind of shit. Okay, if you can't take a pejorative, then you probably have a very thin skin. I get called names all the time. I don't care. If you're going to call me dishonest, just back it up. You can tell me I'm wrong, back it up. You can call me rude. Okay, that does change my attitude. You can call me smug. Does it change my argument? No.
The smugness fallacy.
I want the challenges. I want people to come in. The only people I can get is Ocean, and it's like he just argues on stuff that is very myopic, but it's fun. But he doesn't challenge me on this.
Hey, Ocean. So you were the moderator.
Yeah.
What did you think? What was your opinion on the outcome of that between Jim and Esme the other night?
Oh, he wants to stay on air. Wow. Okay.
All right,
Jim, you sucked.
So here's my overall opinion.
How about honesty?
Yeah.
I don't think that Atheist Republic is a fucking hate group, and I think that Dean and deflating atheism are pretty ridiculous in suggesting that. And it seemed over the course of the debate that even if Dean wasn't convinced, deflating atheism seemed to be going, shit, everything I'm doing is falling flat.
Like, he got wrecked.
It is deflating.
Yeah. He might say that deflating atheism was deflated.
He's all rhetoric.
Deflating atheism.
He literally is.
There were several points where I was biting my tongue in there and wanted to come in and Jim's defense. And there were other points that on the history issues, I was clutching my history degree like a set of pearls when they were discussing the Dark Ages, which I talked to Jim about afterwards, and he and I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And apparently, liking Family Guy makes you a hater.
Is that really the extent of their? I mean, I watched it. I was dying. I was like, "This really is your argument?"
That's all that was left was.
I thought they were going to be like Nazi flags and
right,
things with AR going, "Oh, hey, death Jews or something." That's what
I figured at some point they would discuss some kind of like anti-Israel stance or something like that, or something along those lines that would come up. That something that Atheist Republic has done that could be termed as anti-Islam or anti-Israel.
Yeah.
Which
And
Atheist Republic has done a number of things that have said that could be twisted and turned into that sense. However, the best argument that they managed to put forward was objecting to a Family Guy meme about the nuances of history around it, and they managed to even screw up the nuances of history around it. The conversation that I had with Jim afterwards was essentially like, Jim, I think that you got your facts right, but your overall historical analysis was wrong. The Dark Ages aren't a thing. And when looking at what Dean and Deflating Atheism were saying, yeah, sure, maybe you might be able to say that this meme is overstating what the effect of Christianity was on history and the advancements of technology. However, it doesn't mean hate group. It doesn't establish the.
But anything's a hate group to them that disagree with their narrative. They do that with everybody. Literally, they call everybody hate group. By the way, I'm not going to get demonetized for what I said. Hey, YouTube, I'm Jewish. I'm not anti-Semitic. Love the Jews. Go Israel. Okay.
They have her again.
I think when it comes to red pill religion, when they throw out claims of hate, it's the most beautiful example of projection.
I actually have an intelligent debate tonight, so that's good.
I'm interested in seeing that. I commented in response to Modern Day Debate. It's like, okay, so we got this guy is flying in the face of established historical narrative, and he was like, he responded saying like, I hope you'll listen to me presenting my points and everything like that. I was like, sure, dude, but you should know that you're going against established historical narrative here.
He knows.
You do that.
I was just say however again.
However.
However.
I love it.
No, but that was the best argument that they had. How they spend 90 minutes on that?
I
don't know.
Is it modern? You're not going to be there for the guy who says Jesus was fabulous.
That's right. That's on the non sequitur show. Yeah.
No, it's on Modern Day Debate. It is which gospel was written first, Matthew or Mark?
How is there any question on that, by the way? Who's actually arguing?
Jonathan Sheffield, the Anglican autodidact.
I'm gonna try to get translator Craney man. Come in here. He says I can prove that theological cognitivism is an atheistic, or at least non-theistic position. I'd like to see that actually.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, because the reason I think that's a self-refuting proposition is because the theological cognitivist says that all God talk is meaningless. Therefore, you can't even get so far to say it's atheistic or theistic because that's God talk.
Well,
it's self-refuting.
You can't even say that it's theological.
Yeah, it's self-refuting. I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding what theological cognitivism is because it's a hard position to wrap your head around. Because in the dichotomous state of theist or not theist, I know this goes against everything I've ever told you guys, but unfortunately, theological cognitivism does not fall into either dichotomy.
Well, I know that you and
that's
I
only because of epistemic
discussed
reasons.
this before. I don't remember if we discussed it live or not, but I remember this discussion.
Yeah, it's because you have to shoehorn it into classical, and that's why you don't want to use classical for these types of things. And so
I don't want to use classical for anything, Steve. Classical sucks.
Well, do you like what do you use? Predicate logic, or what do you use more than anything else?
Steve, I don't know this shit.
Logic, it sucks.
It does. It does. It really does. Yep.
He says, in a way, I agree with you. I think you're technically right. I just think the distinction you're making applies to virtually anything, and thus useless in most cases. No. Theological cognitivism is a very specific position. It's not. It's a huge distinction to be made. Like, for example, if I say I'm a moral non-cognitivist, and then I go around saying, well, yeah, but I think morals are objective. Okay, that's a problem there. Or I think morals are subjective. There's a problem there. Those are moral cognitivist positions. You cannot be a moral subjectivist and at the same time be a moral non-cognitivist. That is two completely different positions. Would you agree with that? Who laughed?
That was me. I thought that. Yeah.
So you understand that? I mean,
I'm on the same page with you.
Okay.
Hey,
you don't need equipment. You just click the link. It's in the video description. You don't need anything special.
Hey, Steve, I'm going to head out of this stream right now. I feel like I'm about to pass out.
Hope you gleaned something from it. I hope that we got a lot of things talked about. And again, people are like, oh, look at Steve. One, I'm not punching up. I know I've never done that. I just think Matt's wrong on this. And people are like, oh, I heard this one too. Well, Steve thinks he's smarter than Matt Dillahunty. No, I've never said anything of the sort. but people have their blind spots. And I think this is a huge issue that he has, because again, a lot of people have pointed out to him to this. And if you just want to say, look at to his followers, this is the way we use these words in philosophy and academics. They might use it differently, and there are positions out there that are neither. I think they'd be okay with that. And in some videos, I think he starts to say that, but I don't think he really follows through with it much. And I've watched a lot of his stuff. So, because he'll say something like, well, I guess in some cases, yes, agnosticism can be a middle ground, right? I've heard something say that before, but then he doesn't really go explain why. So, but anyways, thanks, Resist.
Take care, man.
Later, man.
All right. So anyways, oh my goodness, these hangouts go by too fast.
Steve, have you seen any of that guy's argument for tonight?
No.
Oh, you're talking about Sheffield?
Well,
No.
no, the guy who's going to claim that Jesus was gay.
No.
Oh,
What?
I'll tell you what he's going to do. He's going to use the secret gospel of Mark.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and he's gonna talk about Judas, I'm sure.
Secret gospel of Mark is going to be the most obvious one because it involves naked youth and Jesus spending the night.
Mm.
Well, it's also it's in Mark. It tells us about the naked man briefly in Mark.
In established Mark?
Yes, in established Mark, at the crucifixion, they tried to capture the disciples, but he slips out of his clothes and runs away naked. And they believe that it's also they believe that it's actually Mark, and that it's also the Mark that's later found in the tomb by Mary, the young man dressed in white.
Yeah, I'm gonna be interested in it, but I don't place much stock in it either way.
That's interesting. But yeah, I mean, I imagine the main thing he's going to be putting forward is the secret gospel of Mark, which has, I mean, there's a lot of controversy over whether or not that's even a legitimate document, much less whether or not it would actually been included in the quote unquote original Mark.
Yeah, it's definitely not canon.
Right. It's not even historical canon. Like it's just like, oh, well, this is an interesting document. It's contained in a letter. Mm-hmm. We don't even have any manuscript of the secret gospel of Mark.
Yeah, just references to it.
Right. It's a reference that contains a complete analysis of it, or a complete quotation.
Right. It's like it's the actual document itself, but it's not included in an original writing. It's
right.
Part of a larger writing.
Yeah, I think it's a letter between two people.
Was it?
Includes
was it a love letter?
It's a letter from, I believe, a bishop to another bishop that includes a quotation from the gospel in a complete paragraph. It says this belongs in between these two areas, and this is kept secret by the church.
Yeah. Well, it's
supposed to be like this damning evidence that the secret gospel of Mark is kept hidden by the Vatican, and that talks about the homosexuality of Jesus spending the night.
Yeah, I've actually
described youth
that before. That's like a Da Vinci demon type.
No, it's more legitimate than that.
Yeah, it's definitely more legitimate than that.
Yeah, it's because it's a document. It's included in Gnostic gospel texts because of its apparent legitimacy, but there is still controversy around it, especially as to whether or not the claims of the letter are true. This is part of the original gospel.
How would that change? Let's assume let's assume arguendo that was the case. Let's say that Jesus did exist. I think most people are not mythicists. So Jesus exists, and let's say that he was gay. How would that change the Christian narrative?
It would change the Christian narrative in that there's an.
No, I know it would. I'm just saying. I mean,
tell me how bad
it would be.
Telling you.
Yeah.
Well, first of all,
I wanted to clarify. I'm not saying that it would. I know it would.
It would change the Christian narrative in that you would have a clear contradiction between Leviticus and the actions of Jesus.
Sure.
That
would be
have
already
all
in violation
kinds
of Levitical law then.
Yeah.
You're right, because in nowhere else do you see Jesus committing any other sin.
But do you think that would cause a massive schism in Christianity? That people would fall away?
Absolutely. Yeah. And not only that, gays would have rights.
Well, we don't want that. No, I'm just kidding. What's funny is like when people even say that, like the gay agenda, it's like, so gays just want to like be treated like anybody else. That's an agenda now. How's that an agenda? I don't understand. That's an agenda. That's actually just common sense.
I'm blanking right now. What are those places called where like people will send their gay kids to
Oh, they're
to
called
try
conversion therapy or
oh, okay. So maybe that's
Oh.
where the missing part of
reparative
Jesus' life.
therapy.
Maybe he was at a conversion therapy camp during
Yeah.
that missing part of his life.
Yeah, well, it's like 30 years.
It was Ocean that the secret gospel of Mark was in the letter from Clement of Alexandria. So that's really notable.
Right. Yeah.
I forgot all about that. He's considered to be an early church historian or theologian, early church father even. He's
But then-
definitely one of the big guys.
All right, well,
You
let's
also
get
have
the
what's the latest copy of the letter? It's like 1600 or something like that,
Yeah.
isn't it?
let's get yeah. There's a
The earliest copy of the letter. It's
Mason,
like
there's a
really
trans
late.
agenda. That's just to make all frogs gay. I knew that. I know that that's their main goal. Got to make them frogs gay. Translator, let's get you in here real quick because I'm kind of talked out. So you had something to bring to the table. You have to unmute.
He just sent a text message that I'm here though I can't hear.
You have to go to you tell him to go down to his settings and make sure that he selects under mute that little up symbol. He has to select his speakers and mic.
Yeah, he says he can't hear anyone through Zoom.
Can you tell him to go select his speakers through Zoom and his mic? He has to go down to the very bottom panel. It'll say mute. There's a little caret next to it, a little up symbol. Click that. Then it'll say select a microphone and then select speaker. Yeah, he can't hear us. Yes. Translator. Are you typing him this?
Yeah, I just typed him. I said select speaker at mic icon.
Oh no.
Everything's so complicated.
Completely off topic to ask you at some point. That was
Oh, we're used to that. Go ahead. Go off topic. It's fine. We're going to be wrapping this up in a few minutes anyways.
Oh, okay. I mean, it doesn't have to be now. Since you were in the Navy, I was in the Navy. Although apparently a week ago, I was
in the Navy.
not apparently, I was accused of stolen valor a week ago.
Uh-oh.
Get the fuck out. Really?
Yeah, I was. Because on the last part of, when I was in active reserves, I was in a small boat unit, which deals with, running river boats up and down up and down the rivers. So I had, and at that time, I mean, this is way back in 2007. And at that time, we didn't have our own camis, so we still wore woodland BDUs. And so I happen to have all of my blouses from that uniform. I happen to be wearing one. And I happen to actually very much like those. They're comfortable. Anyway, and it's got my name, it's got my rank, it's got special warfare written right below U.S. Navy. And so I'm sitting there wearing this, and the guy looked at me and it's like, that is so wrong. And then accused me of stolen valor. He's like, look, the Navy never used BDUs. The Navy does, what are you, some sort of SEAL or something? I'm like, no, I was a quartermaster. And then he tried to claim that, special warfare was just the SEALs, and, just went off on me.
No, I was slick. I was in the ribs. I was in the rigid holes, went up and down, been all up and down the Tigris and Euphrates. But I just want to know, but as a quartermaster, why did you have the special warfare pin? What was your rate?
I didn't have a special warfare pin. I wasn't involved in SWIC.
Okay.
I was in special warfare division, the portion. So it says special warfare. It has nothing to do with
it was like a unit patch or something.
Yeah, it's just a little. No, it's not a unit patch. It just says special warfare right underneath U.S.
Yeah, you're talking about weapons command, warfare command.
Yeah, special warfare.
Special warfare. Yes, of course. What about it? That's not the same thing as SEALs, though.
Right.
No, it has nothing to do with the SEALs. It has nothing to do with SWIC. It has nothing to do with that.
Warcom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought you were saying.
No. Well, I wouldn't say it has nothing to do with SEALs. SEALs are a part of that, but not not everything that's relating to the special warfare relates to, it has to be SEALs. That's just one particular operation of special warfare.
Right.
That's what I wanted to expand on. Is that I was SWIC, and that's also considered special warfare. So is
demolition.
EOD. So is diver.
Yeah, bell divers. Underwater demolitions. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different things. It's like you were SWIC.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I couldn't have done that.
I thought about going for it. It's the only one that my eyesight qualified me for, because the guy then accused me of trying to claim to be a SEAL, and I was like, you couldn't be a SEAL. It's like, of course not. I wear glasses.
Yeah, they don't understand the distinctions in these things, right?
Yeah, and he didn't. And so in the middle of and he just kept going on and on and on about this and started firing all these questions.
Yeah, well, I've had it happen to me too. Oh, you didn't graduate nuke school, even I have shown my diploma.
As a quartermaster, did you have to go to a primary A school to fall back on? Like, for instance, I had to go to sub school first before I could do anything else. So in case something happened, I had something to fall back on.
Yeah, they always.
Yes, I went to quartermaster A school. I was a quartermaster.
Yeah, but did you have to go to any other A school? Like, okay, I didn't. Never mind.
Yeah,
never
I
mind.
went to.
I see what you're saying.
For that very reason.
Hey, John, just real quick, guys.
That was my I was a quartermaster.
Yeah, let's get translator here. Hey, bud, what's up, translator?
He's on camera, but he still doesn't have a mic up. If you go to participants, you can see his camera's on, but there's no mic.
Yeah, I don't see. He's not muted. He has to unmute himself. And can you hear us?
There's no mic option yet. Here, he just sent a message again.
Yeah, tell him that he has to go down to the mute down at the bottom. Although no, he's not muted on this end, so I don't know. It might be on his end. Yeah, I really don't know. He needs to do a mic check.
From translator, oh darn it! It'd be awesome to be a part of this. Can you hear us, translator? Give an up or down.
Wave if you can hear us.
Can you hear us? Wave if you can hear us.
I don't think he can hear us. All right, so yeah, he has to select his speakers and mic, or his mic's not working. So I really don't know. But while he's figuring that out, yeah. So about the Navy thing, look, I'm really reluctant to call somebody stellar valor, but what happens is when you've been in the military, you kind of sniff out the ones that haven't been. I mean, it's just it's certain things that the other
this guy was or claimed to be ex Army, and was going off on he had friends of his that died next to him, wearing the uniform, and I was like, well, one, I'm not wearing your uniform. I'm wearing the blouse of the uniform that I had for special warfare.
That's the thing, though. I mean, he was probably a 32 Bravo, and he probably knows just a couple of different patches, and that's it. And he saw something and made an immediate assumption.
Sure. Well, I mean, I had people that tell me they graduated nuke school, but then I asked them shit that happened in the dark side. They had no idea.
Well, I mean, he claimed that my warfare pin was a SEAL pin or something. I don't know what in the hell he thought. I mean, it's a stupid warfare pin. It's like clearly you have no idea how things work.
You talking about ESWAS?
No, that's a enlisted surface warfare.
Yeah, I had that. That's a warfare pin, though.
Yeah, that's a warfare pin, but they have air warfare. They have surface warfare.
No, I had the surface warfare pin.
Yeah, and I almost had my surface warfare, but I went to
so glad I did
the reserves. I wish I had gone through and
I was so bored with that. I really hated getting my ESWAS. It was like
I hated it. That was annoying as hell.
Yeah, because you never use any of that information, and yet you had to go from a review board, and they ask you questions that again you're never going to have to know ever again. But you had to know about things about the Mark 55 Bravo radar and the torpedo system, the SM1s, SM2s, harpoons, phalanx, and I'm like, I don't want to give a crap any of this. I really don't. But you had to memorize how far it could go, what the firing solutions were, and all kinds of different things.
Well, and the warfare pin that I ended up getting, and our entire unit got it. It was a new one because what they were doing in 2007 is the reserves had the boat units and they had the Muse, which were the radar. They set up on boats and they run boats up and down the river, just kind of like what SWIC does, only not special.
You can hear us. Can you hear us? Wave if you can hear us. I don't think he can hear us. All right, so yeah, he has to select his speakers and mic or his mic.
Now he's got the background. He's waving though. He can hear us. So okay,
so figure that out.
Cassandra, we're gonna get back to you in a second here if you don't mind.
Yep.
I'm really
you have to turn off the video in the background.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Out the ones that
Yeah, translator. We can hear you, but you have to turn off the video in the background. If not, you're gonna get that weird delay.
this guy was or claimed to be ex army and was going on
Yeah, you
about
have to turn off the video.
friends of his that died next to him, wearing.
Let me see if I can mute that one there. Okay, can because you're in here twice. Can you talk, translator? No. See, one of them is muted, the other one's not. Can you hear us now, translator?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I think we got this. Okay, so now maybe you can run your argument real quick. Although you said you think I'm right, so.
Okay. Well, so one, I do have a speech impediment, so I may use the chat, but anyway, the argument is basically a syllogism that denies the consequence. Okay, so premise one, if you believe God exists, you believe God is a coherent, meaningful concept. Premise two, theological, non-cognitive cognitivists do not believe that God is a coherent, meaningful concept. Conclusion, theological non-cognitivists do not believe that God exists.
Okay, maybe if you can type that out, I can read it. But I think what you're kind of getting at. Okay, so the theological and cognitivist, right? You agree as a position that doesn't think that propositions dealing with God is actual propositions, right? Would you agree with that?
Say that again.
A theological non-cognitivist says that any proposition dealing with anything relating to God is not an actual proposition.
Okay. I think I agree with it, but we may have a bit of a definition issue because as I understand it, theological non-cognitivism, the proposition that God is not a coherent or meaningful.
Right, but also the proposition is not see, that's where I think that people get confused. They read the wiki and they don't seem to understand that a theological cognitivist is not just somebody who thinks that the God talk is meaningless. It literally, cognitivism means that there is no proposition to be had there. That's what cognitivist positions are. A cognitivist position is a position saying that a proposition is there. A non-cognitivist position says that's not a proposition.
Okay then.
So that's why I think where your holdup was, because a theological non-cognitivist will say there's no proposition to be had there. I cannot lack a belief in something that's not even a proposition to begin with.
Well, that I'm not so sure about
Well,
that.
I'll tell you what, we're going to be having that discussion with Ozzy coming up here. I don't know when, probably soon, a couple days, maybe. He wants to talk about this particular. He says that Ozzy and I seem to agree on this. He just says he has a better way of stating it. So I was like, okay, let's do that. Let's have a hangout on that, because if you know a better way to phrase it, he's like I say, he's not saying that I'm wrong, but I think he just has a very more succinct way of putting it. Oh, he was listening to me, and he's like, I don't think he disagreed with me at all. But you want to hold off for that, translator?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Now, do you want to talk a little bit about my point about the distinction between atheism and agnosticism? Because I have a stance on that as well. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, probably going to do it another time, only because this is getting really late in this particular hangout, if that's okay. But I'm happy to discuss Gnosticism and atheism with you in another time. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
cool.
And by the way, I want you to look at something, translator and Jim. 44 dislikes. That's how triggered some people are. And by the way, that was one person that actually did that. I think. I don't think
Jeez.
yeah.
You have 10 more dislikes than you do likes.
And again, I've had people tell me, "Hey, Steve, people think you go around and downvote videos." I'm like, who the fuck would waste your time for that? I wouldn't bother.
Here, look, just for that, I'm gonna give you a thumbs up right there.
Yeah.
Everybody go like this.
Well, they're going to be going away anyway, so.
Yeah, but there's 123 right now.
This, what's funny is this video is already demonetized, and it's like, for what reason? I barely make anything off these videos to begin with, so every one that I do, even if it's like $3 or $2 I can make on a video, it adds up when you have 800 videos. But damn, it just pisses me off that I spend 2 hours doing a video and then they demonetize it.
YouTube already notified you of that?
Yeah, it's already got the little yellow symbol, monetization, limited or no ads due to content. It's identified as not suitable for most advertisers. It's not even up yet. YouTube, what the hell's wrong with you?
There you go, buddy.
Yeah. Did you give me a super chat for $1? That'll make it worthwhile.
No, look at your likes.
What'd you give me? One? I'm tabbed out. I'm in my.
It's you're up to 50 now.
Oh, that's okay. Like I said, I'm gonna be.
Damn, Jim, how many accounts you got?
We know who goes around downvoting videos.
Ooh.
Hey, so something that I used to fall into, a trap I used to fall into that I don't anymore. I've kind of, changed my thoughts on different things, recently over the last couple of years, is I would fall into that trap of, well, all theists are this, or all atheists are that, like all theists are closed-minded, or insert anything you want to put in there. And now I realize that can't be true. I mean, that's, and I bring this up to say that the manatee was in chat last night spewing his nonsense. And for people who don't know who the manatee is, Brett Keane. And he linked to a video at one point that he said he had just done. And the title of the video is Atheists/Atheism Promote Child Abuse.
Yeah. Well, he's just a fraud to begin with, right? I mean, he's just straight up does it for attention. He has no moral grounding of any kind. He is the most duplicitous, dishonest. I don't know how people who have not seen his history. He goes back many years. He used to be an atheist. He realized there was more money to be made milking Christians, so he became a Christian. They dried up, so he went back to atheism. Now he's back to Christian. He doesn't give a shit either way. He doesn't believe any of this stuff. It is all one scam.
No, wait a minute.
Thank you, Christy Santiago. I love you, and I really do mean that, even though she's married. But I'm going to tell you, Christian Sandro, you are the bomb. She's a wonderful woman. So
I kill anybody that gives Christy Santiago a thumbs down.
no shit, right? I mean, you know how many people would like beat people's asses for her, or like Shannon or a few other people? It's like, damn. They'd get beat down, man.
Christy already knows how I feel. I don't got to say nothing.
Oh, are you stepping in, my girl? You stepping in, man? Are you doing that?
Uh-oh.
You doing that with me?
I'm sorry. What? Hey,
That's okay. She knows Christy Santiago, as much as I love her, she knows I have eyes for other. She knows who I like. I've been honest. And no, Jim, it's not you.
Okay.
I don't know. You said otherwise.
Not that otherwise. Not that otherwise.
I think you and Jim would make a cute couple, actually.
Our children would be beautiful and smart, at least. Well, at least partly smart.
Pregnant.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Life finds a way.
I could see Jim with a girlfriend like Christy. They would be a cute couple. He could have her on his arm. Yeah. You'd be proud of that, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Okay. So anyways, I lost the thread here. What were we talking about?
Some guy.
What, translator?
We were talking about some guy.
Some guy?
Oh, Brett Keane.
Oh, Brett Keane. You're right.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, thank you. Brett Keane, some guy. By the way, if you guys have never seen Brett Keane, the opera, go listen to it. It's freaking brilliant. Oh, thank you, Harry. $2. I'm not going to like this video, so I'll give you $2. Ah.
My theory is I've never seen Nephilim Free, Brett Keane, or Red Pill Religion in the same place at the same time. I think that they are all the same.
Ooh, conspiracy theory. I love it.
picking up my phone away. It was so funny. A couple of days ago when the wine was came in drunk. That was so funny.
Have you listened to Brett before, translator? Are you familiar with him?
Well, have I listened to who?
Brett Keane?
No.
Oh, you're lucky. Feel grateful. Feel appreciative that you have never been exposed to his just complete fuckery.
There needs to be some kind of
Well, let me ask you guys this. Let me ask you, because I do got to end this. Got other things to do. So let me ask you guys this. Who do you guys think is more duplicitous and more dishonest? Ken Hovind or Brett Keane? That's going to be one of the hardest questions you're ever going to have to answer, I think.
Brett Keane.
I'm not really familiar with Brett Keane, so
How are you? How? How is that possible?
I'm here. I'm on this video right now.
I'm envious, Jay. I'm literally envious of you right now.
I didn't know who he was until you told me, Steve. Like 2 months ago.
Wow. I just guess I've been around a very long time.
That's the only
I just
reason
haven't
I
been
know
on
him,
YouTube.
because of
You
non-sequitur.
know who? Okay, now, just so everybody knows who I am, as far as like what I represent. I am a Christian, by the way, but I do find one person that I saw on. He's been on plenty of hangouts, but Darwin, that guy Darwin, I guess they have Darwin's greatest hits.
Yeah, Darren's deity. Yeah,
That
he's up
guy,
there
boy,
too.
He's something else. Bro.
Brett Keane's worse.
Oh my goodness.
Brett Keane's worse.
I'm
Did
like,
anybody
what
ever
in the
see that?
world?
Did anybody ever see the video when Skylar was arguing with Darwin's deity?
I've seen a little bit of
Oh,
it.
yeah. Have you ever seen the videos of me going after Darwin's?
No,
No, I haven't.
where are they at?
Oh, they're
Okay.
around.
I have to look for it.
This isn't a very long one, but there's a really good video on Darwin's Greatest Hits channel. That the very first scene is me having a little short discussion with Darwin, but it's a very, very good video because at the van, the guy named Gus Bellinger just wrecks Darwin's to no end. I mean, Darwin's was almost in tears at that point. And it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. The vitriol that came out of Gus's mouth, and Gus can be pretty vitriolic, but this was justified vitriol. He just destroyed Darwin's in a way I've never seen.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
All right.
Okay, good.
Hey, I
Okay,
do want to say something.
Don't overtalk me,
Steve,
damn
I
it.
got a
Okay,
compliment
good.
you. I got a compliment
Moderator.
for you. Oh wait, what happened? Oh, okay. Okay. Something's going on in chat. Okay. I do have a compliment. I forget which hangout it was in. I think it was with JMD Apologetics, and this is when we were off stream, I think, and you all came in. And when I first heard you say that doubt is not a virtue, that's when I was like, okay, I like this guy because
Was I not right on that?
Like,
Was I not completely right on that? Epistemologically speaking,
I really agree with you on
Thank
that.
you.
And so
Thank
the thing
agree.
is that I used to like when like going on Twitter and like being involved in different social circles dealing with like theism versus atheism and all that. It's like a lot of the non-believers I was interacting with, like it's like they wore it like a badge, and it was just like, what in the world? Like it's not even all that deep, so
What a fucking liar!
I found that interesting.
yeah. Hey, what's that, Darren? Darren, I didn't quite catch that. What were you saying, Jay?
All right. I was just saying that I respected you when I first heard you say doubt is not a virtue, because I kind of felt like a lot of people that were non-believers, like they wear doubt as if it was like a badge of honor.
I'm jerking off into my dog's mouth.
You've got that soundboard. I want that sound.
Adults who act like children. I have not been hogging the mic.
Fucking liar.
Are you out of your mind?
Shut your mouth.
I'm a
Stop
patient person.
interrupting me.
You could actually, I'm not even kidding. You carry on a whole conversation to yourself. It'd be like, hey, Darren, what do you think about atheism?
Damn it!
You are wrong.
I'll tell you what, the best one was he was in a hangout on Discord, and he was going after this mod calling him a troll, And then he went to what he thought was a private conversation with another mod and just totally lost his mind. And someone captured it because he thought he was in a private conversation with this other mod, but he was actually, broadcasting it through Discord. And then he got a hold of the person who captured it and mirrored it. And he was begging this guy, well, could you please take that down?
Oh God. Hey, this is okay. If you guys don't remember, this was back when MK had hangouts, but Darwin's always would be like begging him for moderation and stuff like that.
MK, please. MK, you gonna allow these guys to troll? I didn't finish. MK, a little bit of moderation and stop the trolling from the big fat slob. From the room. I am involved in bestiality. Come right into her face. Anally rape me? I can see my dick. A hand job.
Hey, what the hell? It's already demonetized.
Now, by the way, we are definitely demonetized now. So thank you for the super chat. By the way, there's a G-Man soundboard too. I have it somewhere. I'm almost disappointed that nobody's made a soundboard about me. It's just not interesting enough, and that's cool. I don't mind. But it's
Mormonism is not Christianity.
Well, we're gonna make one a Jim. We're gonna make one.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. AR is not a hate group.
Speaking of G-Man, is he? Somebody was saying he was having trouble and might be homeless now.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but I don't keep track. I don't like to have ill will happen to people, but it's really hard for me to have sympathy for certain people. It really is. Even something like G-Man, it's really hard for me to have sympathy for. You don't know the duplicitous shit that he's done. You don't know how many times we've reached out our hand to have it bit by him. I've gotten rabies from the dude. It's just ridiculous. We actually were going to bring him in on the non sequitur show to do segments and have him be a part of it and help him out. And he just literally spat in our face after agreeing to everything, and then just turned around and just started shitting on us. It's like, no.
Yeah.
He's a doxer too, isn't he?
Yes. He was going to dox me, but then he realized that my information is already out there. He actually was going to call way back when I had a different landlord. He was going to call my landlord and tell him to not rent, or tell her not to rent to me. Yeah. So it's hard to kind of have sympathy for somebody like that, isn't it?
Yeah. I hate the argument, these people that dox people, and then they'll say, well, it's public knowledge. You can go look it up yourself. Well, just because something's public knowledge doesn't mean you broadcast it on YouTube or some social media. It's just ridiculous. It's as if they're saying, I want a consequence to happen from me putting this information out there.
Yeah.
Streets, they call that snitching when you doxing people like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't contemplate it. It wouldn't even cross my mind. I know Jim's made his real name.
I wouldn't.
It's so funny. I wouldn't even tell anybody anyways, because it's
all my shit's out there.
Yeah. Well, there was one thing you kind of doxed yourself, which was hilarious, but I'm not going to get into that. That was funny.
Yeah. I don't ever come on the stream drunk. Oh gosh.
I haven't drank in 2 years, guys. I'm proud of myself.
That might be interesting. I don't drink hardly at all, mostly because I'm driving a lot.
Same here. I don't drink.
I would say if I became drunk.
I've never had a job in my life.
Hey, on translator, who's this person coming here? Gaming fan? Do I know them?
You're already demonetized. Give it a shot.
Yeah, gaming fan. I don't. Hello.
State your beliefs.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. I am involved in bestiality. I was having sexual contact with my dog.
I'll never get enough
contact with his dog.
I will never get enough of that soundboard. I can sit there all day long and still enjoy myself with that. It's so funny. It's just hilarious. Somebody actually went out of their way to actually make that. That's creative as fuck, man.
Yeah, that's what you're gonna call creative, Steve. I mean,
you didn't do it.
No, I didn't do it, but man, That's just some of the most disturbing stuff I've ever heard in my life.
With that, we're going to end it. So anyways, thanks for watching this, guys. I know it got longer than and much longer than we expected, but I am trying to do more hangouts in the morning. Oh, well, no, you've never heard that before. But you know, I like doing hangouts in the morning rather than night. I'm finding, if, for example, everybody's out of the house and they're at work, then I can talk louder. And well, I don't know, it's just not late at night. I get some Europeans over here too, so I'm going to be trying doing more of that. But I do want to talk about very specific instances of things. This was one that I thought that was really good to talk about, and I think that it went over pretty well. I think that most people are understanding this. And again, I don't want to dog on Matt. People are going to be going, "Oh, hey, Matt, Steve's talking shit." No, I'm not. I just like him to recognize that there are people out there that are neotheist or atheist. That's it. As soon as he tells his people that, say, look, don't go around telling people you have to be one or the other. There are things out there in philosophy where you neither have to be either one or the other. If he does that, boom, I got no argument anymore. What is there to argue with?
Steve,
why does he do? Why he doesn't do that? I don't know.
And Steve, don't forget, put the English translation alongside those equations.
Yes, I will do that. I promise. I'll do that as soon as we go off air. As a matter of fact. All right. So if you guys have any questions, email me, steve@askanything.com, or leave a comment in the video description. Try to avoid messages to me on Facebook, only because I don't always get the messages because it doesn't refresh, and I don't check them that often. I don't like Facebook messages, instant messages. I really can't stand them because they go off my phone, and so I have to turn the notifications off most of the time. So if you're going to message me on Facebook, 90% of the time, I'm probably not going to get it, unless you're in a group. The groups, I usually get those, but I don't get the individuals. So like Jim's in a group of mine. I always get those, but whatever your show is, Unheavenly Host.
Unheavenly Host, yeah.
Whatever the hell it is, who cares? You still have that? Yeah, okay.
Who cares?
You want to plug your stuff then, Jim, and so we can end this?
Just check us out at atheistrepublic.com, on Facebook, and check out Non Sequitur and Steve McCrae and the Great Debate community.
Oh, by the way, we're going to be trying to get with Modern Day Debate to incorporate a lot of the Great Debate community stuff with them, because it's leaving G+, so we're going to be trying other things, and I think he's willing to do something like that because we have kind of the same format. And by the way, Jim, do you get a lot of shit that you're hanging out with me as the CEO of Atheist Republic, even though we kind of agree on most things? I mean,
No, I don't. Okay. No, I mean, I don't know why I would.
Because because I don't toe in the party atheist line.
Well, neither do I.
Yeah, exactly. And yet, even the things that we don't disagree on, or something that we do disagree on, we can talk about. It's like that's the key thing, And I think that your approach is great. This whole thing of, Steve's just trying to tear down atheism. No. I want to see a stronger atheism. I want to see better arguments, people. And I think Jim's bringing that to the table.
I agree.
Speaking of modern day debate, I just want to remind you, Steve, if you would please do what you can to put Standing for Truth and Dr. Cy Garth.
Yes.
Oh, geez.
Working on it.
Good. I need to see that.
Yeah. Standing for Truth is, you have to know a lot about biology to really address his points, and because he doesn't. And the thing I've noticed is this, and I'll end it with that. When you have somebody, like for example, like the other night we had somebody on, and I knew about like Neffy. I know enough biology to just throw him under the bus. But people like Standing for Truth are just very duplicitous in their narration, and they use biology in a very bizarre way that mixes fact with fiction, and it's very difficult to extricate the two. So I am not qualified enough to have that kind of discussion, because I have an interest in
Cy Garth is.
Oh yeah, he would definitely be really good. All right, with that, guys, good night. And like I said, please leave me messages what you think, and if you're going to attack the argument, go ahead. But I really don't want to hear this anymore of this. Oh well, Steve's just talking shit. I don't usually censor my comments. I only did on one video, only because we had trolls come around, and I'm not interested in that. But most of the time, I'm letting you guys say whatever you want. I really get tired of people just arguing for the sake of arguing without giving me an actual reason, or just saying, "Well, my dictionary says," okay, it's.
Hey, Steve, send us out on one more Darth Dawkins soundboard.
Will do. I still have it up, I think. Let me see here. Did I close it? I will do that 1 second here. By the way, real cool trick. If you guys don't know this, if you close out a tab and you want to reopen it, on Windows, you hit Control, Shift, and T. How cool is that? Yeah. So
I cannot tell you how pissed off I am right now. Being a fucking asshole is you're wasting your time asking me a question.
and let's end it with how about this one? Here you go.
I'm basically a nice person.
Good night.
So we